Traverse Park and Rec Commission is now called to order. Marilyn, would you please call the roll?
Bob Karstens.
Here.
Russell Clark.
Here.
Peter Doran.
Here.
Bill Dorrier.
Here.
Al Larson.
Here.
Rebecca Cass.
Here.
Chris Maxbauer.
Here.
Kevin McEllier.
Here.
Dave Taylor.
Here.
Excellent, a full house. All right, this portion of the meeting is dedicated to our first public comment session. We do have a few rules that we'd like to go by. Anybody can address the Park and Rec Commission, and we would have you approach the desk, sit down in the chair, lean into the microphone, state your name and address. We limit that time to 3 minutes within reason, and I can extend the time if at my discretion. Is there anybody from the public who would like to address the Park and Rec Commission tonight?
Al, could we actually make a clarification?
Yes.
This first public comment is just general public comment associated with anything related to Parks and Recreation. We do have a special public input session, which is the next item on the agenda, specifically related to the Civic Center Master Plan. So I know some gentlemen are here. I know that's what this group is here to speak about. So it's good to make that clarification.
Thank you, Jason. I do appreciate that. Anyone who would like to speak to the commission, please.
Some of you may know me. I'm Bob Carr. I'll do this in 3 minutes. And I didn't make enough of these. Jason knew I was going to be here, but I'll get you guys, I'll do every other one, I think. Funny thing happened when I was living in Traverse City, and then you'll share it. My high school got in trouble out in Watsonville, California, and Karen and I, that's my wife, she's a school teacher here in Traverse City.
Thank you.
Went out there and moved on campus because it was a boarding high school for kids without homes, and I didn't have a home. And tried to, here, there's extra ones here, just to save the school, which we were able to do, get it back. I got on the school board and did all that kind of thing. And when I was there, I got there at 11 o'clock at night when I was a sophomore in high school, and the next morning I was hoeing beans. And so I worked on farms, I learned about agriculture and so on. And what I brought here, if you recognize this name here, Dole. This is Dole strawberries. This is well-picked strawberries. On our 300 acres on our farm, we have Coastal and Driscoll. There's several of them. I got involved in a thing called the Agriculture History Project. It's been going on for 30-some years. And how it started was we decided to bring in some kindergarten and
Mr.
first
Carr?
graders.
We're having trouble picking you up for the microphone. If you could lean.
Not using a microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry, folks. The Agriculture History Project out there, they started 30-some years ago. And what they did was they made some wooden cows, and they taught these kids how to milk the cows. Peel the apples, shuck the corn, the steel ring, make muffins and that kind of thing, and then they went on a hayride. And I became the hayride guy. That thing grew from that until they built a double-decker museum, moved an old farmhouse in 4 pieces, built their first barn for restoration, built their second barn for restoration, and we just laid the footings here Tuesday and Wednesday for our third barn. Now, how the agriculture history works is it's volunteers, and these volunteers won't give up their jobs, I'm telling you. And they bring in the first graders from all the schools in the area, 22 schools, then the second graders, and you go from first grade, and then the second grade, when you're in second grade, you go back and do it again. And you do it the third grade, and you do it the fourth grade, and you do it the fifth grade, and of course you do the hayride. And then in addition to that, they have family days and all those kind of things. This thing's become a big thing, but what they learned was, and because I got to know the politicians, was that the politicians, agriculture is king, absolutely king. And so when I show you Dole, this is Watsonville, California, there is no sprawl, you cannot build unless you build next to the town, and it's all because these little kids became big kids and became the politicians. And I looked at your 458 acres, Karen and I pulled into that property up there north of Traverse City there, and I immediately called Jason, or went over and saw Jason. And I said, I'm going to throw this out to you, you guys, we'll just get it started. Now, I'm a historic preservationist, and I look at those farmhouses, I don't want to see them tore down, they're not too expensive, we'll get the volunteers, we'll do all that kind of thing. But what I can see happening is involving the schools from the 5 or 6 county areas to come and just learn how to milk those wooden cows and all about agriculture. And with that, because we're in such a tourism area, you're going to see that old barn's going to start being used, and then the implements, the guys from Buckley and over there the one over there on 131, all those tractor guys and everything, and they'll start doing restoration, and this thing can just grow into 2 things, one for the students and one for families, and then, well, actually 3 things, and then tourism, which is a self-generating financial kind of thing. And so I just wanted to touch base with you. I said I'd take 3 minutes. It's interesting, well pick is one kind of strawberry. Dole has a different kind of strawberry. On my academy, my high school, which I was on the board, we've had UC Davis have a experimental station there for 40 or 50 years, since the school started in 1949. And I was told when I was coming up there that the first flatlander strawberries in California were planted on our property out there. We have flatland. They always thought they had to be on the hill. So my point about this whole thing is to give you a little bit of vision, that it's something that I'd like to see happen. And I think Parks and Recs might be just the people. I'll be glad to help. Karen and I have moved here. She's subbing it all over the place. And I feel very passionate about it. We're hoping that this can happen because of the property that you had the foresight to purchase, and that's where I'm starting. Jason will keep me in tune. You want me back, we'll go in more detail. The phone numbers to the people that work there, he has them. And it's funny, the fellow in charge of Ag History now, son, runs Driscoll. And if you go into Meyer next time and look at the raspberries and the blackberries, you'll see Driscoll. And, because he was a little kid hanging around Dad. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? All right, thanks. Next is special order of business, and we begin with Russ Clark speaking about the Civic Center Master Plan.
Thank you. The intent with the master planning process for the Civic Center is to continue to receive input, but perhaps more importantly, to try and give me some direction from your thinking of the input we've received so far, which is in your packet, a couple of sheets of 53 items that have been identified. That list identifies them by votes that were cast during the public input session on the 22nd of February, I believe it was. And that by no means is all that can be considered for the Civic Center in my mind. It is an extensive list. I did indicate in my memo to you that we probably couldn't fit all those items on that property if we tried. But I do need, in order to develop a plan to bring back to you next month, some direction of how you folks, as the Parks and Rec Commission, would help me prioritize this list. And I guess the easiest thing to do is to really kind of go through. We know the overall characteristics of this piece of property. It's broken down into Pacific Sports Fields, the Powell Arena, Easling Pool area, facilities management, parking pretty much on the westerly edge, the circular trail around the perimeter of the property, basketball courts, Kids Cove, picnic pavilion, the amphitheater, and then we have skate park, and then an events area in amongst the trees along the north edge. This park is fronted on Front Street itself and Fair Street to the east, and is accessed from Garfield in a one-way directional traffic coming into the property, double access off on the South Street of Titus coming into the park property. All of these parameters that this piece of property have do offer some opportunities, but also present some limitations to some of the ideas that have been presented so far. So what are those ideas? It's basically a list that has been provided by citizens and recreation groups during our February 22nd meeting, and these were identified as this first one comes up. There were 10 votes cast. Each member of the public was given 5 dots to cast their top 5 priorities, and this particular item was received 10 votes under the grounds and park activities. I tried to break it up into 3 segments that are on your list, and under the grounds and park activity, installing a community event sign on Front Street was the highest vote getter. And there historically was a sign at this location that became, and it was a reader board type sign, if I recall correctly. It became in great disrepair and required some extensive repairs and beyond the budgets that were considered at that time, and it was removed. And so historically, there has been a sign on this property. A lot of different events occur on this property, and the citizens at our last meeting indicated that this was something as a high priority. What I would like to suggest to the Parks and Rec Commission is that this list is fairly extensive. I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time, but if we could do something as simply as do a show of hands, if you agree with this idea to be considered, we'll move on to the next one. If you want to discuss it, then let's discuss it. If you don't agree, then don't vote for it. But if that's okay with the chairperson, we will move in that direction. So with that, could I see a show of hands that you would agree with this item to be considered in the master plan process?
Support.
Great, thank you.
Russ,
Next item?
I have a question.
Sure.
The facilities division of the county is located on the site, and they occupy a building. My own thought is that a plan for some number of years would not envision the facilities division to be there at that site or anywhere on this site. It's just too valuable for recreational activity. Has there been any analysis of the building that's being used as to whether that can be reused for some recreational activity, or whether its demolition would be the most feasible thing?
I'm not aware of a specific study of the architectural structural integrity that would allow for a clear span open space area over how it's currently built. My recollection that it was designed and built to do what it's doing today, and remodeled to accommodate that, I should say. Long term, I personally agree with you. That's not the best place to locate county-wide facilities management on that valuable piece of real estate. However, that piece of real estate does require the highest degree of maintenance of all of our parks. And I would assume that some degree of maintenance facilities should be retained on that property to some degree, but to the full extent of the entire county, my opinion, it should not be there.
Can we get the head of the facilities division to give us an idea as to whether there would be opposed to moving that, or whether they really just don't care?
The facilities department, last I heard, and they would be more than happy to move that building. The problem is they have nowhere to go.
Right.
And there is no money to build them a facility somewhere else. At the moment, the county's priority is a new health department building. And we anticipate that that's going to be about $2.5 million. Unless a box of money falls out of the sky, I just don't see it happening anytime soon.
But insofar as a planning process where we're envisioning for 10, 15
The county board
years.
would love, as the facilities department, would love to have that building moved, would love to have their location somewhere else.
But is it out of the realm of possibility that that building could be reused for indoor pickleball courts?
It's something that could be evaluated. I don't know if it has enough clearance height-wise. That would have to be looked at.
Clearance, I don't know that, depending on how height or how tall the ceilings would need to be. The biggest challenge would be the way the interior of that building's configured. I'm not sure that the truck bays that are in that building would provide the width necessary for multiple pickleball courts. Maybe one would fit in there. just in thinking of how the building's laid out right now, and they are permanent walls that are dividing those bays.
From a master planning standpoint, we could identify it as being a possibility of a reuse of that space of the property, perhaps requiring a new structure at that same location to accommodate multiple types of recreational uses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
This is actually more of a question for Jason than it is for Russ. Jason, is there any way that we can incorporate this type of idea of renovating that building or removing that building into a 5-year DNRE plan so that we can get DNRE trust fund money to do exactly that?
It's something that could be we could certainly identify. We can identify any type of project we'd like in a DNRE plan.
I understand that, there's still no place for the facilities department to go, but just to get maybe, think about this in the future, that maybe we could renovate that building for recreational use, we could put into a plan.
I think following this process and adding that concern into this master plan is the best process for us to follow.
And this will be inserted at some point into the DNRE plan, and then this commission will prioritize all the ideas for this plan as to how they would like to approach it, the implementation. Great. The next item was outdoor pickleball courts. You agree or disagree? Agree. All right, thank you. That was quick. Memorialize and enhance the historic Indian Trail marker tree. Everybody familiar with what I'm talking
Yes.
about?
No, Russ, could you provide me a little background on that, please?
Sure. There is a very, I don't know the age, but an older oak tree within the complex that has a chain link fence around it to the east of Howell Arena and north of the ball fields that is identified as a historic Indian Trail marker tree. In other words, it comes up, grows horizontally, and then goes vertical. And that has been, basically, I guess, memorialized with a chain link fence around it, but currently no signage and no identification exist to educate anyone what that significance is. And so it came forth in our discussions with the public input that should be brought forth as an educational opportunity. Now, from a grounds facilities aspect, we have piles of material that are important to maintain the grounds around it, and some of those may need to be adjusted to facilitate a memorial approach to this tree, but that's something that can be done over time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've had an agreement on that?
That tree's at least 58 years old.
Okay, all right, thank you. Everybody agrees with that concept?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. The next three were basically grouped together because they involve the multi-purpose field area. And the multi-purpose field area is basically the large baseball field near the south entrance and the ball field directly north of that. I think it's fields one and three.
And
I can flip back real quick to the
4.
1 and 4. 1 and 4, yes. This area right here, the large baseball field and the softball field to the north of it. This area basically works as a multi-purpose sports field. There is a light pole at this location that does limit some of the width aspects of this function, and we have proceeded to remove the diamond dust that was originally on this Babe Ruth level baseball field, and we have sodded that, if I recall correctly.
We did not sod, we overseeded and
Seeded it,
fertilized.
okay. All right, we seeded it. And this hosts what types of events, Jason?
Hosts a variety of field sports. Most frequently, the most frequent rental of that facility is for rugby at this point. Although it does get a lot of drop-in use for things such as football, Pop Warner football practice. We got some baseball teams throwing the ball around out there. We have ultimate frisbees played out there quite often. It's becoming a more and more utilized green space within the Civic Center for a variety of different activities.
Yes, Pete.
Of those three, I understand what increasing the lighting means, but what specifically are the enhancements and improvements that are
Can you
needed?
help us with that, Jason, from your knowledge?
The I'll be honest, I don't recall
Okay.
what the public meant when they said enhance the multipurpose field use capability and the improvements. I don't recall what the context was along with those comments.
Okay.
The lighting is a major aspect of that. There are several groups that would like to utilize that in the evening for a variety of different games. And I don't recall, we could check the,
Well, I'd be in favor of it, of the lighting, but I wouldn't be in favor of something as vague and undefined as improve or enhance without knowing what that really entailed.
I would agree, and the thought process wasn't developed enough to give detail at this point. I guess my suggestion on how to approach this is that this area functions as a multi-purpose green turf area, and we've already done improvements to enhance that by removing the diamond dust on the Babe Ruth field. And at this point, to my knowledge, there aren't any other specific physical field improvements that I'm aware of that would need to be done, because the intent was to leave the backstops there that exist and be able to convert it back to a baseball field should the desire be there in the future. We have maintained that flexibility. And that would be my recommendation how to approach it. Lighting is something that is basically a goal. It doesn't affect much in terms of a physical component of the site, other than placing light poles, and that becomes a goal and a dollar cost attached to it at some point in the future. So if that's okay with the commission, that's how we'll approach it from a master planning standpoint. We don't have any other detail at this point to add to it. So if that's acceptable, that's how we'll move forward. Everybody agree with that approach? Or you want more detail?
I'm confused.
Sure,
Are you
okay.
saying that the improvements are not defined yet?
Right, they're not defined. We don't have anything on the table at this point to do improvements specifically.
Okay.
And we've already made a number of improvements by removing the Babe Ruth capability of the infield with diamond dust and reseeding it to turf. And I assume adjusting some irrigation to accommodate that. So that gives that depth and length of field for multiple uses that didn't exist originally.
So I echo Commissioner Dorian's statements. You know, I agree with the first two of the last three items,
Okay.
but the last one is a little vague at this point that
All
I
right.
couldn't agree to it.
Okay. So we can basically, I guess I would suggest that we would just identify as lighting as a future opportunity for that area to enhance its use. No other physical improvements are proposed at this point until they come forth to the specifics for the Parks and Rec Commission.
I'm in agreement with that, yeah.
All right, great. That's how we'll approach it then. Thank you. The next item was to connect the Civic Center to the TART Trail System. This has been master planned by the TART organization to provide a linkage coming up through some other public properties from the south coming to the Civic Center itself. And this particular recommendation did not have any specific details within the TARP property. There is another recommendation further down the list that actually suggested creating an additional hard surface trail within the property for TARP. But this was basically one of those aspects that becomes more of a goal than a physical attribute within the property. And the physical connections, improvements all really have to occur off this property for it to happen. Yes, sir.
I don't think it would hurt to mention that in the master plan, though, that I, for one, am very much in favor of doing whatever we can, on-site or off-site, to create linkages to other existing
Okay.
pedestrian non-motorized trails.
Sure. We can definitely speak to that in the report aspects, and on the plan, identify with an arrow and intent that connections go in this direction. So it is a matter of record and as part of the master plan. And if that idea is supported, then that's where we'll go. So is that an item that the commission can support?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Next, continuing under grounds and park activities, provide sidewalks at the Garfield entrance to the park. Currently, the Garfield entrance into the property is a one-way vehicular entrance, and there is not a sidewalk connection from the sidewalk in front of the Oak Park Elementary School to the sidewalk within the park, just after you cross past the fence by the bridge. So this was brought forth as a recommendation. Yes, sir.
Would you go underneath the bridge and
Yes.
all the way to the parking lot?
Currently, there is a sidewalk under the bridge,
Okay.
and it ends right at the fence, if I recall correctly, or near the fence as
So-
you come in from the school property.
Okay.
But the Civic Center doesn't own the real estate in that corridor linking out to Garfield, and it would require a cooperative effort between the city and perhaps even the adjoining property owners to create a sidewalk linkage. So is this something that should be added to the master plan?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great, thank you. Extend the pathway east from the skate park to the walkway. Currently, the central walkway that goes through between the ball fields, from the parking lot to the concession stand, goes as far as the skate park, but does not connect further east to the loop walking trail. And if you've had a chance to walk out through there, you see some well-worn grass paths occurring through there from bicycles and walkers. And so it was brought forth that this should be a consideration in the master plan. Agree?
Yeah.
Okay, great, we have support for that, thank you. Expand the amphitheater for more cultural events. This really is a discussion that leads to some physical improvements, if I recall correctly, to the existing amphitheater, to perhaps be able to do more things with it. And if I recall the discussion from the public input process, it was thinking, suggesting things such as backdrop, physical backdrop activity for the stage area. And to my knowledge, it was not physical expansion of the turf sitting area, but it was dealing with the stage area for some physical improvements. So do you recall anything different than that, Jason?
The major discussion with the amphitheater is to create a more of a band shell, provide a taller back to it, and kind of an overhang, so they could put, or there could be staged events, there could be concerts, things of that nature, possibly improve the electrical capabilities out there as well.
Sure.
We have some basic cable, or basic electrical, but it would require an increase in wiring out there.
Okay. Is this something that the commission would support in the master plan?
My opinion on this is, I don't think it's used hardly at all, is it, Jason?
That's correct.
And a number of different places I've lived have large outdoor amphitheaters where it's a real community center. There are things going on all the time of all different types of events. It would be great if Traverse City had something like that, but I look at that little facility and it seems very small, it seems very tucked away. I'm not sure how much activity it could support just because of its small size. That doesn't mean that things can't change and we can't rework the earth around there to make it bigger and to make it a place and to make things happen. I'm concerned with our small Park and Rec staff. It would be difficult it's a lot of work to get things happening in there and to schedule all that. I'm really torn between the fact that this is something that the town could use and it could make our civic center a community center, with the fact that I don't know if it's viable. Are there any other opinions on the?
I have a question with regard to that, is in the summer when there's baseball games, are they almost every evening, or?
Yeah.
To what extent do the baseball games fill up the parking lot?
Baseball games fill up mainly the north and south asphalt parking lots. They don't fill the parking area just in front of that to its fullest extent. There may be a few cars parked there periodically.
Like if they had an event in the summer evening when the baseball games were going on and they wanted to use the amphitheater, I was just wondering if there would be enough parking to accommodate people who came to it.
Baseball games typically last about 2 months out of the year. You know, we're packed Monday through Saturday for baseball. Practice begins 1st of May. Baseball's over by July 30th.
Okay.
So, I mean, that provides all of August, all of September, into the fall and early spring, that that portion of the park would have easier access based on the other parking and the other activities that are going on within the Civic Center.
Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, I liked your comments. I think a really nice amphitheater would be a good addition to our community. I don't think that's the place for it. I would support maintaining what's there, maybe some minor additions to it in terms of functionality. But I think we ought to look elsewhere to build a really big amphitheater, maybe along the bayfront or something like that somewhere. There's just not enough room there.
That's very true.
I agree with Bill and also with Bob. I don't think that, if we were really to get large groups in there, there's no place for everybody to park. I mean, it's predominantly a pedestrian, get there by your bike type of venue. And, I've lived in town for 35 years, I guess, and I've been to one event there. That's where the Williams brothers used to mass
Their float?
their groups before they put their floats in the parade. Who actually uses that?
We have very few users of that facility.
Can you recall any specific ones?
We haven't had anyone specifically rent that facility for any type of performing arts since I've been here.
Okay.
Although, and do you mind if I go into my comment?
Sure.
It piggybacks well. That is one of our most inquired about facilities. And we have people that call probably once every couple weeks that want to put on some different type of event or a different type of concert, predominantly concerts, at that facility. They're excited about the facility, and we do say that we have an amphitheater because it is there. It's when they come out and see the condition or see the lack of a covered area and the lack of a back around it, that's when they typically drop out. We have several people interested every year.
Who are those people that expressed interest? What type of groups are they?
We've had heavy metal people call. We've had folk groups. We've had bluegrass. We've had different people wanting to do 2 or 3 day small music festivals, predominantly acoustics. Although we have had people request before they've seen the facility to have all their amplifiers and things like that plugged in there. So we do get a variety of musical groups. We've never been. No one has ever inquired that I know of related to any type of plays or any type of theatrics. But it is.
There are neighbors not too distant from that site, I believe.
Right, and there would be management. There would be some management issues that we'd have to control some of the noise after 8 p.m. or we would definitely work with our neighbors in order to accommodate that. It's similar to what we do for the skate park currently with the condos across the street. We've often had skate park events where there's a DJ, and we require them to place their speakers on the back side of the park so the sound is not projected directly at the condos. Their music has to be rated PG-13 or less, and we require them to be basically turned off by 8 p.m. So we have had some experience with managing things like that, but the proximity of the condos to the skate park isn't nearly as close as the neighbor to the amphitheater.
Mr. Maxbauer?
Well, I don't think that particular area is conducive to concerts, and I think we ought to look at that spot to do something else with it. I'm not, I'm not exactly sure what, but I agree with everybody who's said that an amphitheater in this area would be wonderful, but that's just not the spot. It's just too small. So I would like to see us do something else with it.
Consider a different use for that area.
Yes.
Okay, we can definitely do that.
Mr. Chair, just a brief comment. Russ, I'm very grateful for this effort you've done, and I don't expect you to do a financial analysis, but I'm a little uncomfortable, so I want to talk about the elephant in the room relative. I think realistically, these items need to be tie-barred to a funding mechanism or a budget value mechanism. I see some items such as walks and TART trails that likely could be funded by a DNRE Transportation Enhancement Fund. There's some tree items. We have a memorial tree program. So every one of these items, I'm trying to look to tie-bar it to the budget rather than just having an unrealistic wish list for these items. So I'm not sure how the budget's going to come into this.
My opinion on that, Commissioner, is that we're really looking at a bigger plan than this year or next year or this recession, and because the exercise is kind of moot with if we look at this year's budget situation, because the answer will be nothing. We can maybe erect a stop sign, and that would be about it, based on the current culture. But if we think, where do we want to go with the park in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I guess I feel that that's what this exercise is for, and that we don't do something that prohibits what we really want to do with it in the long term. So your point about the budget about money is valid, but I guess I feel like that this current stage we're at now is, what are we interested in, what are we not interested in? As we funnel down to the things, then I would say we'd start talking about money. Do you agree with that?
You prioritize as you go forward, absolutely. And, from a financial investment standpoint, once the plan is created and the list is generated of what all these items are and what their value would be, we come back to this commission and the county board and the community, okay, to accomplish X, Y, Z, we need to generate these kinds of funds. Is it a special interest group leading the effort? Is it a trust fund grant? What is it? And those types of decisions will have to be made in order to move forward with any implementation process.
And then, just to follow up thought, the needs analysis that Director Jones has already commissioned, that will also dovetail. So that'll be the voice from the people and what they value, which is what our job is, to reflect what they value. Okay.
And based on that, if I may speak to that, it may not be in our best interest to wrap this up real quickly until we hear some of those needs analysis, because we may be able to accommodate something in this park that's really important to the greater community that we haven't thought of yet.
Yes.
And so I just would like to throw that out as something to consider. I don't know the exact timing on it, but if it's going to occur yet this year, we would, could perhaps look at the completion of this after that's brought forth.
Jason?
I think I want to kind of respond to some degree to Kevin's comment. I think this is important for us to understand, for management of the department to understand what direction this commission would like to see the park go in. By saying, we would like to see an expansion of the amphitheater, that lets me and lets our staff know that, maybe arts and culture is a part of the Parks and Recreation direction that this commission would like to see us going. And we know that that's guided then by the input that was taken from the community. It also allows us, in giving us some direction, it allows us to compromise to some degree. In the event some type of new art grant pops up, and this is, expanding the amphitheater is high on the list, and it's developing that amphitheater to some smaller degree than some grandiose amphitheater where we're going to be hosting, the Rolling Stones. It does allow us an opportunity to compromise and say, all right, this is the way I can partially meet the needs and partially meet the desires of the Parks and Recreation Commission as they have identified in their Civic Center master plan that they listen to the community on. So this is more of an idea. It's more of a broader, bigger picture issue, and it allows us to prioritize for future budgets.
We've kind of talked around the table on this. Is the consensus of the Parks and Rec Commission that, one, we're going to retain the amphitheater, or are we going to remove it in the long term? I guess it comes down to that.
I just have some more questions that I don't think we can answer tonight.
Okay.
From the sounds of it, it might be possible that with some minor improvements that we could attract some use, based on the phone calls that Jason's getting.
Sure.
If the reason why people aren't using it is because it's too small, once they see it, then we can't fix that problem.
That's correct. That is correct.
So in order to, I would support some minor dollars in the direction of improving what's there without expanding it, if we think that'll work. Somehow we need to figure that out. But if nobody's going to use it, then I don't want to spend a dime on it.
Also, I also think there's some merit in looking, if there's another use that would get more use, then maybe, as Christine said, maybe we should go in that direction too, particularly since you've indicated that so far it has hardly had any use at all.
Yeah,
That's,
but what bothers me is the phone calls that he is getting. And then people change their mind. That's intriguing. I'd like to see if we could fix that, maybe. Otherwise, I'm with you. Look for some other use.
Chris?
Well, Commissioner Doyer makes an excellent point. Jason, this is spring. Over the next few months, could you count the number of phone calls, the inquiries that you get regarding that amphitheater, and just give us an idea how much interest there is going to be in it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Now, I'll display my advanced level of cynicism, but I don't walk the trail at night. I've walked the trail a few times with my wife during the day, but I notice there are a lot of walkers in the evenings. And that particular corner of the Civic Center is sort of the darkest corner, and so having a screen there, to me, invites crime, invites a place to be snatched behind there and have things happen that we don't want to have happen. Does anybody else share my feeling that that's a liability there?
I do.
I do.
Absolutely.
It's a very, very.
It's real
walked in
dark
there.
back there. As a male, I'm not worried, but I could see how a woman would feel really uncomfortable at night in that area.
Jason, do you have any knowledge at all of any unsavory activity going on there in the evenings, or have there been crimes there in the past that we're aware of at all?
You mentioned liability, and we're not seeing any liability associated with crimes or any type of negative behavior in that regard happening out there. We do have liability, though, out there with skateboarders. We have the amphitheater is a fantastic ramp to jump off of for skateboarders because it's not enclosed. It doesn't have a back. It doesn't have a ceiling to it. It's at a really nice height where the skateboarders can prop up a picnic table and do a rail slide down it. So it's like currently we do have some liability. When our staff sees that there are issues like that going on out at the amphitheater, we remove those to minimize our liability. So to some degree, some improvement out there would reduce that liability. We haven't seen any safety concerns associated with any type of vandalism or any type of person-to-person crime and things of that in that corner. But you mentioned liability, and we have bigger liability because of the skate park or because of the skateboarders typically utilizing that area for that type of thing.
If I could suggest this, from the master plan standpoint, let's identify this as an area that could be an either-or. It could be a continuation of the small amphitheater, or it's an area that could be considered for a new recreational use once something comes to the surface that could really utilize the topography and the area of that portion of the park more efficiently and serve greater number of people. And I suggest that's how we approach this. If that's acceptable, we'll go on to the next one. Outdoor splash pad was brought forth. Not necessarily a specific location, but the concept of it. Do we agree or disagree with this idea?
What is a splash pad?
What is a splash pad? It's basically a hard surface water activity area where instead of running through the sprinklers on the grass type of thing, you're running through different types of recreational facilities that are shooting water, or you can shoot water with facilities. And there's a very popular small one down in the village of Kingsley in their park that gets extensive use. And it provides a water-related activity without being on a beach.
Is that for, I'm sorry, is that for little kids or for everybody?
It can be for all ages.
Oh.
All ages.
Adults with squirt
It just depends on the features that are put within it.
Okay.
Okay, and like a play structure, you design certain features for certain age groups within this defined area. And it requires, obviously a water supply and a good drainage system.
How much area?
The one in Kingsley, if I recall correctly, is probably a 40 by 40, and it has just basically two physical features to it. But they can be very extensive and be 6-7 times that large with a multitude of features in it. It just depends on the degree of activity you wish to invite.
Is it used a lot in Kingsley?
Yes, it is. That is used quite heavily during the summer months, obviously, in the evenings especially.
I just wanted to say, Russ, that soon I'll have my 11th grandchild, and they have a blast in these water.
Really?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I would be in favor of this.
Okay, all right. Well, it's something that can be considered as water-related. It doesn't necessarily require a lifeguard, those types of things. But it does require a water supply, and there is a cost associated with operating something like this, because you have to provide water.
I'm sorry, I've seen them where they're actually just recycle the water, so it's not
That's true.
a
That's true.
water waste. And obviously you'd have some kind of a treatment associated with it.
Filtration system, yes. Mhm.
What happens to them during the period of the year when
10 months of the year.
In the off-season, they're basically something that's winterized, drained out, and just
okay.
it's vacant space.
Can you convert them to ice rinks?
That'd be cool. That's a good idea.
You know, by design, that might be a possibility, but you'd end up with having to have some physical features within the ice rink that may not work well with a freeze and thaw cycle of ice. Because they're permanently installed plumb fixtures within this.
Chris?
Yeah, I think that, that the city of Traverse City, if I'm not mistaken, is going to take a look at putting a splash pad down at the bayfront.
That's part of
yeah,
that plan.
as part of their plan, and,
A water feature, they call it.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is it something that you'd like to consider or not consider in the Civic Center plan?
I'd like to see it instead of the amphitheater.
With a slide.
Yeah, with a skateboard slide.
Okay, well, we can accommodate something, and then I can provide you some graphic examples of what it might look like as far as features, just to get some idea to help size what it could become. And so we can accommodate some space within the Civic Center for this, and we just have to look at where it's located based on other features you want to include in the plan. So we will take that as a yes to add to the master plan.
So could we see those hands again? Rounds.
Yes, yeah, could we get a vote on that, please? Thank you. All right, thank you, I appreciate that. Another recommendation was eliminate Field 4 to expand Howell Arena area. And this is one of the small baseball fields for Little League, or American Legion, I should say. And it's the field closest to the structure. And when you look at the plan, if you were to expand the physical components of the building, that's the conflicting use that exists today to offer that expansion. Yes, sir.
So Russ, does this go along with add a second sheet of ice?
It could. This was a general discussion that wasn't necessarily just for a sheet of ice.
But a bigger how? Okay.
Could be, yeah.
I would definitely not be in favor of this.
Okay.
Because
There are, and I need to alert you to the fact, since you've received federal dollars to build this park, you would have to seek permission to remove existing recreation features on the property, because federal dollars were involved in helping to build it through the Land and Water Trust grant, Land and Water grant.
I echo Commissioner Doran's, I'd not be in favor, but I am interested in where is the need to expand Howell Arena coming from?
Well, there was, at the public meeting, there was a lot of discussion about creating more interior multi-use space,
I see.
okay? And whether it's including things like climbing walls and, more locker rooms and things like that, those were all discussed, but they became separate items to a degree. And in this particular case, it was in the context, if I recall correctly, like a sheet of ice, and more event opportunities, being a bigger space.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them.
Correct.
Dance studio,
Correct.
indoor play area, workout area.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Okay, so all of those kind of relate to
Yes, it does.
this ball field thing.
Right. But, the aspect is, we could expand facilities there without necessarily taking the ball field out. We could go in a different direction.
Yeah.
We are limited. We wouldn't necessarily be able to duplicate the size of a sheet of ice in all directions by expanding the building in different directions than the ball field.
Russ, you said federal dollars are involved, and so we would have to get permission.
Yeah, the money originally came through from the federal government through the state
To build Howe Arena?
to build, no, not Halloween.
To build the ball fields.
To build the ball fields, to put in the bridge,
Okay,
and the walking trail were funded through Land and Water Conservation Funds, administered by the state. Federal dollars provided, administered by the state.
so any time that we fiddle with any of that, we need permission. So would we need permission to bring a sidewalk in from Garfield?
Not necessarily, no, because that's really off-site, okay? But if we wanted to take out the walking trail or take out a ball field or one of the existing facilities on the property to create something different, we would need to ask permission. Okay?
Just to make sure that doesn't include the amphitheater.
You know, if I recall correctly, the amphitheater was part of the original grant that was developed. I'd have to research that to make sure, but it may be something that we have to.
Oh.
Okay. I'm glad we went down that little road.
Because
Okay.
it may be something, and it's not unrealistic to ask, because things change.
Yeah,
And it's the same staff that administers the trust fund grant through the state of Michigan that we would have to ask that question, because that's where the Land and Water Conservation Funds come through that same staff. But that, it's not unreasonable to ask, because things do change.
Jason?
I'd just like to make a clarification. In the past, we've talked about funding through the Department of Natural Resources. The two major grants through the Department of Natural Resources are the DNR Trust Fund, as well as Land and Water Conservation Funds. When Russ mentioned federal dollars, the Land and Water Conservation Fund are dollars set forth by the federal government that they give to each of the individual states' Department of Natural Resources. Then those Department of Natural Resources then dole those out to the local communities. In regards to Field Number 4 was part of the original scope of work, or the original scope of work for the grant that our department applied for and received in 1972 to rebuild the ball fields. The ball fields were built in the 50s by American Legion, and that's what led to the original American Legion baseball agreement. In 1972, they were bulldozed because we received some land and water conservation money through the Department of Natural Resources, and those baseball fields were entirely rebuilt in 1972. When Howe Arena came along in 1989, they kind of bordered the scope of work that was associated with the Land and Water Conservation Funds from 1972. So if we were to actually remove Field Number 4, that is changing the scope of the original funding associated with that grant from 1972. And that's the reason that we would have to ask permission for that versus the sidewalk or other projects that are going on inside the Civic Center. I do not believe that the amphitheater was built utilizing funds from the state of Michigan, whether it be trust fund or land and water conservation, but that's something we would have to look back in the records, the construction records for.
I'm not sure if that was one of the features or not. But I know the fields were, the bridge was part of that, and ultimately the trail was built with those types of funds. So is this something that we should consider or not consider in terms of the process in the master plan, is to eliminate Field Number 4?
I would say no.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. No votes. Remove the chain link fence along Front Street. Obviously, we know the history. This used to be the fairgrounds, and it was fenced in, and there, for control of the space. The fence has remained in place for the most part. It's been opened up in a number of areas to provide better pedestrian access especially. Mr. Dillon?
I am in favor of this. I think it presents the entirely wrong image to the major traffic street that the park faces. If there are reasons why you need some blockage there, I think that there's other more aesthetic and friendly, neighborly type ways to do that through landscaping or wooden partial fences or whatever. But I definitely think a chain link fence looks like almost as uninviting as a barbed wire fence.
Right, that's right, especially at 6 feet in height or greater.
Is this a safety issue because of the traffic?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Is this a safety issue because of traffic and young kids?
That's what
Well, on Front Street, The trail itself, the walking trail, is quite a distance from the sidewalk next to the street, okay? There's a fair amount of green space in there between the two. In some portions, it is a slope down, other portions, it's the same grade. Fair Street on the east side, the edge of the curb and the edge of our walkway are this far apart with a chain link fence on it. There is a real safety issue. And it's a traffic lane, not a parking area along the west side of Fair Street. Safety is always an issue, and when you have kids on trikes and that type of thing on the walking trail. One compromise might be, as Mr. Dorian suggested, a different type of lower level approach, being a combination of landscaping and other type of fencing to offer a bit of a barrier between the Front Street traffic and the walking trail.
Well, I would be in favor of if we were going to put a different type of fence in there, or a lower fence, or...
And another discussion I'm going to throw up, if I may, I do feel it's important to maintain some of the chain link fence around the property, especially on the back side of the apartments and the school and those types of areas. But along the streets, it becomes a real visual issue. Perhaps reducing it from 6 feet to 3 feet or something by cutting it off and lowering the top bar might be something to consider, because it is chain link and you can crimp the top and still make it safe and not have as large of a visual obstacle, but still have the safety without new investment coming into play is something to consider.
I'm in support of that.
I am too.
Me too.
Okay, all right, great. We can take that approach, and perhaps that fence could be used somewhere else for a dog park, like the part we cut off. Screen of facilities maintenance parking area. This is on a site analysis drawing that I presented earlier. That basically, the site facilities maintenance parking lot used to be the tennis courts on the property, and the large 10, 12-foot chain link fence still exists on 2 of the sides, the west side and the north side. And it's wide open visually. That entire parking area is from the walking trail. It's open visually from the entrance into the Civic Center. And I would like to, what this came forth and is basically suggesting, is providing a screen. It could be as simple as putting a vine that grows on the chain link fence that exists without having to plant expensive material. And just offer some degree of privacy and screening during the summer months when the park's in the highest use.
On a temporary basis, I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I really think that we should have in our plan the elimination of the facilities group being there, and I think, at least preliminarily, that's where the pickleball courts ought to go.
Okay.
There's better
Definitely.
parking, and it's more accessible than, and I don't think would conflict with the other types of activities like basketball that would occur down in the south end.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. So there is support to consider it the short-term aspect, but long-term, you're suggesting that it really become another recreation feature in place of parking as it currently is used?
Right.
Okay, all right. Great, thank you. Everybody agrees with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And this recommendation was more of a marketing type of approach, is market the outdoor amphitheater for more community events. And I think that was brought forth because of some groups that were, individuals were there that really felt that better marketing might get greater use. It's not something I can physically put on the master plan,
That's right.
but it's something that can be a goal.
And even the
recommendation.
signage announcing events, has a marketing effect to it as well, too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in support of that.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on that? Support for that idea?
My opinion is that we don't need to put this in our master plan until we hash out exactly what we want to do with the
That is correct.
amphitheater, so
Okay.
I would not be
Put it
supportive
on
of
hold?
putting that on the
Okay.
master plan.
All right, I agree, okay, I understand, sure. All right, thank you. Continuing with the grounds and park activities, improve lighting in the amphitheater, and it comes back to lighting at the multipurpose field. Again, this, I guess, is something we put on hold relative to the outcome of the amphitheater as far as lighting in that area.
I would say that's included in the other one, and we've already talked about the multipurpose field, so
Okay, all right.
I guess we're already covered on this one, I feel.
This received 0 votes, but an indoor-outdoor skate park BMX facility. Support for that at the Civic Center?
I have a question about, I wasn't at your public session, so I'm not sure how these got on here with 0 votes.
Well, this was a compiled list of things that have been recommended over time, even
Okay.
prior to the February 22nd meeting. And so what I did was I provided the list that we've been told before, and the staff has been told of ideas to consider, and some folks didn't vote for all the ideas,
Yeah.
that were generated, so.
Was the voting limited to, a certain number of votes per participant?
Yes, we were limited with sticky dots.
Okay.
We've given five
All right,
dots.
that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe we ought to, are we going to go through all the 0 votes, or?
I think it's,
Just to
we
see.
could go through them fairly quickly. I think it's, some of them have some merit, others don't. And so if we can just do it quickly, a show of hands, and if you want to discuss it, then let's discuss it, but let's just get through the list.
All right.
Okay.
So, show of hands, support for the Civic Center for this activity.
Which one are we on?
Indoor-outdoor skate park BMX facility, I
Okay.
see no votes. Make all facilities ADA accessible. This is especially the outdoor facilities.
I take it then that there are some now that are not?
That is correct. That's received support.
Yes.
Paintball gaming area. Support for that? Nope. Move on. Create a dog park fenced area.
Not yet.
No.
No? Okay. Rent and utilize the basketball courts for tournaments and leagues.
I don't see why.
I don't see where that
Right,
plays
It
in our
doesn't, it doesn't apply to any physical changes to the property. It's a staffing issue.
Yeah.
Russ, and you, just so the commission realizes, what Russ is doing here, he's hasn't really edited a lot of these comments. These are specifically, he's just basically turning over the information that was offered, whether it's facility related or not. This is all of the input from
That is
the
correct.
community, facility related or not, so.
He's trying to get direction on how to move forward. You need some guidance here. Yeah.
Find a new home for facilities management did not receive any votes from the public, but I think it's pretty unanimous here that that's something that needs to be addressed.
Well, when you only have 5,
Yeah, we only had 5 votes, that's right. Continuing on, a rubber surface walkway for better for the joints. I personally received a email from an individual who walks the walkway on a regular basis, suggested doing a rubber surface topping on it to make it easier to walk on. However, you would not be able to snowplow it. And that is used year-round by a large number of people.
That kills
No
me.
support?
Deal breaker.
No.
Plant more trees. As Kevin mentioned, there is the Memorial Tree Program, but it's something that, whether it's the memorial trees or otherwise, should more trees be...
not in the middle of a baseball field, but aesthetically,
Right.
there's a lot of places where they could be. I think it's cool.
So it's something to support overall as a goal for the park. And the Memorial Tree Program is just one tool that can help implement that.
Russ, weren't we going to do a forestry management plan for each of our parks?
Yes,
Wouldn't
that
that
was
be-
recommended in our strategic planning, that ultimately we do evaluate our larger parcels from a forestry management standpoint.
I would think that this would be more appropriately addressed
Okay.
in that process.
Okay.
So we
So we can
manage
make
that
that
forest.
recommendation as part of the overall goals for this property is a forest management plan to look at replanting trees,
Right.
offering diversity. Okay? Create a community events area and tent rental. This was something that was brought forth, that just having a space dedicated with a tent up all summer that could be rented and utilized for different functions on the property. And how big it is would have to be determined on the space it goes in. Is something that commission would want to support?
No.
No? Okay, great, thank you, we'll move on.
On a tenant.
Picnic shelter at Kids Cove, creating an additional picnic shelter down in the area of Kids Cove.
You say additional, is there one there already?
There's one near the entrance drive coming in, but not one as far west as Kids Cove play area.
Is there room there?
Correct.
I'm sorry?
Is there room there?
Yes, there is room for a picnic shelter to be built in amongst the trees between Kids Cove and the ball fields.
I could see some, Well, I don't know, there's quite a few trees shading that area,
Yes,
so
there is.
so the parents don't need
Shade is.
don't need it for shade. I was thinking primarily for shade and if it was a hot summer day or something, but
Jason, how would you assess the demand for the pavilion at the Civic Center? Is that a high demand item?
It depends on the month. It kind of goes in cycles depending on what's going on in the facility. One of the biggest concerns and complaints we get about the pavilion is the distance it is from Kids Cove and from bathrooms at the sector building. So a pavilion, it makes sense that the community identified this as an idea, because I believe that the demand for a pavilion closer to Kids Cove we would see an increase in utilization of that pavilion versus the current pavilion due to its location.
Even further from bathrooms, but closer to Kids Cove?
No, this pavilion would actually be about approximately equal distance to the sector bathrooms as they exist now, but much
Oh, I
closer
thought
to
you meant
Kids
the
Cove.
bathrooms at the...
are there,
No, currently,
Civic
one of the challenges with the current pavilion in relation to Kids Cove is you have to actually cross Civic Center Drive to get there. We do have stop signs up and things like that, but I think that creates a psychological barrier for people identifying the proximity of the current pavilion to Kids Cove.
are there picnic tables real close to the Kids Cove presently?
Yes.
Is this
And
pavilion?
so do many kids play, if it's raining out, do kids continue to play in Kids Cove?
We have some kids that still play there even when it's raining, yes.
I mean, I could see adults wanting to take refuge while they watch their kids, if the pavilion was close enough so that they could keep on monitoring them, that if they wanted to keep playing in the rain, but...
The key to the pavilion would be folks renting it for birthday parties and things like that, larger group events, family reunions and things like that because of its proximity, versus just a shelter.
Is this the area where we see a lot of homeless people hanging out?
Yes.
The current pavilion's the strongest concentration. The current pavilion and the sector bathrooms are our highest concentration. This is a little bit farther away from where the homeless population typically tends to cluster.
I like those trees that are down in that end of the park, all along that, whatever that street is. The east-west Titus, is that what it is? Okay, Titus Street. That whole end of the Civic Center property has a lot of trees in it. If we didn't have a pavilion, probably the proper place to put one would be near Kids Cove. But I'm concerned about over-cluttering. And it sounds like our pavilion's in the wrong place based on where our other facilities are, but
It's very accurate.
yeah, I'm not in favor of adding another structure down in that area.
Vote, yes or no? Vote yes? One, okay, great, we'll move on. Parking organization and landscaping at the picnic shelter to buffer the drive. Currently, the existing picnic shelter and gravel parking lot have unlimited free vehicular access off the primary Civic Center Drive. And from a safety standpoint, if a landscaping buffer were placed between the parking area and the edge of the drive with controlled access, it wouldn't be as much potential conflict for vehicular contact coming in and out of that parking lot, gravel parking lot surface. And so this, again, we had 0 votes, but it was suggested that looking at something to help organize how circulation and parking is screened from the edge of the drive.
Support.
Support?
You have a quick comment?
No, I know this is something that Commissioner Clark has been in favor of for a very long time, and I've seen his drawings and renditions, and I think it's an excellent idea. I think it would make a huge improvement to the area, so.
Thank you. So there is support
Yes.
for that one?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Expand and update playground equipment. Currently, we're removing playground equipment from the property because of its age over time, because it no longer meets current safety standards. And it's something that if we want to continue to provide a diversity of recreation experiences beyond Kids Cove, we would need some new play equipment. So is this something to consider in a master plan? Yes? Okay, thank you. Add light-sensitive switches to the walking track lighting. I think this was basically trying to deal with the aspect of on and off times, is that right, Jason?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And this is kind of an ongoing project. Our facilities management department looks into different opportunities to try and fund changing to light-sensitive switches on our lights on an annual basis.
Should this be a goal for the park overall, to try and help manage some of the lighting costs perhaps, as well as facilitating the users? Did I understand the intent?
Correct.
I'm sorry, Jason, how does it work now? How do the lights come on now?
They're on just timers. Timers set at 5 o'clock in the morning till they turn on at 4 a.m. or excuse me 5 a.m. turn off at 7:30.
All year round?
Any given time. Our electricians go around and adjust them, but because there's 140 lights around the track, it takes them quite a bit of time. So they might get adjusted once or twice a year. So it varies.
So
what
one
this
switching system doesn't control all the lights. They have to do each one individually?
To my knowledge, that's correct. But that's something that, for me to confirm that, I'd want to talk with our electricians. But that's something that the facilities department looks into on approximately an annual basis to change over to light sensitive, which would make more sense.
If it would save an appreciable amount of electricity cost, then I could see doing it. Yeah, definitely. But
I have a question. Jason, the county board just got a grant through Northwest Michigan Council of Governments for $24,000, as I'm sure you know, to replace a bunch of light fixtures and bulbs in the Civic Center. How often do these grants become available where we might be able to apply for something like that for this particular subject?
I don't know I'm not familiar with the grant process that you're referring to.
Oh, well, it was approved last Wednesday night at the county board.
I would have to believe that they would pay for themselves in a matter of a couple of years.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Just
I mean,
on,
we're gonna replace something like 900 bulbs and
Yeah.
300 fixtures in the Civic Center.
so I would say it's worth exploring,
Yes, right.
and
As
I would
one of
have
our
to believe it
goals.
would pay for itself.
I had everything plugged in on this, and I just didn't have it plugged into the wall. We're back up now. So we will add that to some of the overall goal for the plan. Improve the park entry at the corners. This is speaking specifically to the pedestrian access to the park, primarily on the east side of the park, both the north end and the south end. There are openings in the fence that allow and improve them, and improvements have already been done on the north side, coming from the college intersection near Fair Street into the park. But the south end does not have a very good improvement. In fact, I don't think there's any hard surface down there from a standpoint of a walkway other than just an opening in the fence. Currently, there are no existing sidewalks near the southeast corner on the street system near the park, on Fair Street or Titus. That would be something that could be conditioned upon this improvement being implemented, is when sidewalks are made and connections come forth, that this be considered.
Would you include the opening at Beetle Street along with this? There's a bus stop, a sign, at least a sign, and a really weird opening in the fence.
That's true.
At
That's
Beetle
correct.
Street.
That's right.
That probably could use some.
That's right.
As long as we're going to do these.
I would agree.
Okay.
And it's just basically looking at how circulation for pedestrians can be done safely and not have the fence be obstacles and that type of thing. Yes, sir.
I'd be very much in favor of this, along with the replacement of the fence along Garfield. And I'd suggest at some point that we ask the city planner because what these things are is this is how our park is perceived by the city. Mm-hmm. Even the people who are not entering it, they're traversing it, and they get this image. And I think that Russ and maybe Dave Weston's thoughts on how they might like it to look would be very valuable.
I'd be happy to meet with them and get their input on that.
Okay, great.
Great. So this is something we would support?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Adjust the width or add a trail lane on the east side of the Civic Center track, or trail, I should say, to be linked to the TART trail system through the park. What this objective was creating two parallel pathways within the park on the east side, one devoted for TART to connect north-south and to get up to the college intersection, and the other to maintain the walking trail separate. And that was the intent of this objective.
Is that because there aren't many bikes on the park trail?
Sorry, there.
Is that because there aren't not many bikes use the Civic Center? Can people use bikes at the Civic Center?
Yeah, I do.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Because I just very seldom see them, and I was, so there's no, okay. I'm just trying to understand why you
Right,
want two
and
parallel.
I think the reason this came forth, or someone was thinking from a safety standpoint, because TART is primarily bicycles moving at faster speeds, and the walking system at the Civic Center, or the trail at Civic Center, is primarily walking. But currently, we have two directional aspects in terms of signage at the Civic Center: bicycles in one direction, walkers in a different direction, if I recall correctly, for safety. But this recommendation was just trying to separate the two uses, but it does, basically parallel two pathways, close proximity. So is this something you want to consider?
Yes.
I don't. I think it's duplicative.
Okay, all right, great. We'll move on then. Thank you. Building and indoor activities, the list there, that concluded outdoor activities. With buildings, there were a high number of votes to create an 8 to 10 lane indoor pool in addition to easing.
Where would it go?
Well, that's something we'd have to look at. Obviously, a few trees would have to come down in order to facilitate that kind of space, but, it either goes to the west of the current pool or to the north of the current pool. Those are basically the two options. Going south takes out part of the parking lot. And so from the standpoint of building expansion and being in close proximity to the current investment, you'd either look to the west or to the north. Yes, sir.
Looking through your list here, there's quite a few of them that deal with more aquatics.
That's correct.
So I suspect some of the same people were voting for the same things here.
That's right.
I'm going to go through here and vote for the ones that I like, but I think it's a pretty clear message that we have a need for more aquatics.
And that we have the ability to
And that-
expand for that.
Yeah, and that maybe, we can vote on these, but maybe we need an overall strategy for how to meet the splash park plays into that too. An outdoor pool was on your list here.
Right, it is.
That and a splash park kind of go together.
Yep, it can, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I agree that with Bill's observation that there's a need, but we had the YMCA here making a presentation. You're all very well aware they're in the middle of a big capital drive for their new facility, and I'm thinking that that's going to be the mechanism to satisfy at least the increased number of lanes in an indoor pool, as opposed to the taxpayer funded and if there are grants available, I would hope that they would go to the WISE project and have that accomplished first.
That's part of this discussion. It's important to have.
That's an excellent point, Commissioner Doran. In Sarasota, they have a Y at Potter Park, and it's like a joint, it's a joint effort.
Well, in Escanaba, they have a Y at Delta College. That's a joint effort. Ys they do joint partnerships all over the country.
And I think it would behoove us to try to work with the YMCA to try and get funding, or assist them in getting funding. We could actually, the indoor running track with cardio and fitness room, that would fit in there as well.
That's right. That's right. And I guess what I would like to ask the commission is, should we, on the master plan itself, identify the capability or dedicate an area for expansion without delineating exactly what it is or knowing when it will occur, but setting aside this piece of real estate of the Civic Center as potential additional indoor recreation facilities.
You know, I just don't think
Obviously,
we've got the
the details have to
room.
be worked out.
You know, if we had more property, but I just don't think we've got the room.
Okay, all right, well, that's what I wanted to ask.
I disagree. I think we could make the room, and I think it's an overwhelming need. I think it's a good idea to, on the master plan, just set aside a chunk for something aquatic or indoor.
Are you, Russ, going to be recommending anything in relation to expansion into the Oak Park School
Yeah, that's all right.
property or building?
You will see at the end of the list that was recommended for consideration of expanding the park property when and if the property, Oak Park, was to become available. I personally have not, brainstormed any new recreation activity that would overspill onto that property at this point. And I haven't really seen the demand or the need and the desire come forth to consider that. But long-term, if the Oak Park School property were to become available and this TCAPS was looking to either partner or remove that from their inventory.
Yeah, it's got a gym.
It's got a gym, it's got a lot of opportunity with the building for community center activities, and this the largest piece of property adjoining the Civic Center.
If I were to have to make a call right now, I'd say that's where we expand.
Me too.
All right. Okay.
And as density grows in Traverse City, those kinds of uses,
Right.
we'll see more use, I would think.
Long-term, there's going to continue to be pressure to create a large, actually more than one large community recreation facility that has a variety of choices for recreation activity.
And I think we should keep in mind the neighborhood, the controversy that raged over the creation of the Howe Arena, because predominantly the neighborhood was very concerned about the traffic and about the intensity of use, and to do something on our existing site, I think we'd have to be very sensitive to what kind of traffic that was going to generate and how it was going to be affecting the people surrounding us.
When you think about the move to make our community more walkable and more bikeable, I think you're going to have more and more people within the city. The people who live over on Slabtown and places like that, I think you'll see more of them biking and walking, and also with transit. And so the Civic Center, I can see in the future having a lot more use from people who don't use cars. Whereas I think the YMCA, the proposed YMCA, is way out off of Silver Lake Road, isn't it?
That's correct.
But
so
there
it's-
will be a
it's-
bike trail out there.
Right, but there will also be growth there, and there will be people there who will access that one
Yes.
by bike and by foot too. And so anyway, I can see the need for both places as in the future as the population grows.
Okay, if I can kind of bring us back to get through the process.
We digress.
Back to the vote.
We have a large number of votes here for, you can see, indoor facilities. And long-term, several of them are dealing with aquatics, some obviously pickleball, indoor fitness, and then there's dance and other activities, weight rooms, et cetera. All this relates to creating a structure that has multiple recreational activities and multiple uses. And our current structure doesn't facilitate that. Should a structure be created on this property that does facilitate that, or should it be something that's considered on an expansion parcel, such as the Oak Park property? Should that occur or be an opportunity in the future, this is the kind of direction I need to go forward, because it's a big impact on this piece of property. And if we were to create a facility that would do an indoor walking track, it's a pretty large facility.
I'd like to see us have a facility. I've you too, when you travel, you go to
Oh,
a
absolutely.
YMCA and they have this, or a community center, and they have an indoor track, and, I mean, they're great. I love them. I don't think that the Civic Center is the spot. I think
Okay.
that we've got enough other property that we ought to take a look, or, if Oak Park became available.
Sure, okay.
Then
Right.
I would say, yeah.
And maybe that is the compromise here, that if property can be, if the Civic Center property can be expanded through an agreement or acquisition of the Oak Park property, then look at providing a larger facility on the combined property in some fashion, as a goal. And not necessarily try and devote and carve out a piece of this property and dedicate it for a future building footprint.
I'm in favor of what you just said.
Me too.
Great. Well, that'll allow us to go through this one a lot quicker, because this is basically all following that same type of thought process. The marketing program to better utilize Howell Arena for events is something that's been an ongoing discussion, and that's more of a staff-related aspect than it
that's
is
not
a physical planning
master plan.
exercise for the master plan. Expand locker rooms as they currently exist, or for other uses. That's something that, with a little bit of expansion on the current building could be accommodated, and we could move forward with that aspect. Adding an outdoor Olympic pool kind of follows in with that splash pad and large community center event aspect. Workout machines as well. Indoor play area facility, again, community center approach. And a second floor addition to the Civic Center building, if structurally it could be supported. It doesn't increase the footprint, but it does increase the use. And that, I don't know whether it structurally could be supported, and this is basically referencing the area over the meeting rooms. Additional thoughts with the dance studio, the second sheet of ice, we've talked about that already. Adding facilities to Easling for more indoor water play, screening the building service area from the walkway and Front Street. In other words, the area between Howell Arena and Easling is the service area where all of the deliveries are made, and there's some heavy equipment out there. This recommendation was basically trying to put some additional landscape screening out there to help screen some of that use and function of that service area. Ensure ADA access to the pool. Create a large ride, slide, and glide indoor facility. This was a written comment that Jason read at the public input, that basically is a large community center with a mixture of uses within it. And adding a second floor to Howell Arena, which was one that was out there as a suggestion. It's a very large space and clear span to consider. Then the other ideas that were brought forth was creating a committee on land and facility procurement that basically falls into place with expansion of the Oak Park aspect. And these are more goals than they are physical master plan activities. But I think that from what I'm hearing, there's consensus to continue to pursue that as an option should it come forth, be prepared to have a plan in place as to what we would do with the property.
I'd like to see us have a plan in place in the event TCAPS decides,
Okay?
for funding to purchase that
That's
piece of property.
The plan, let me suggest this, with this plan, let's identify that as an option, list the ideas that have been generated to how it could be used without necessarily drawing the detail, because in reality, this becomes an architectural challenge, because it's a building. And from a master plan standpoint, we could identify it, we could show an enlarged footprint over the school property, but it may require some total revamp or tear down and start over to accommodate what we're dreaming
Yeah, we
about.
just had that discussion at the county board regarding the health department building, and it's cheaper to tear down and just rebuild.
Sure. Okay, well, that would be my suggestion, how I approach it from the master plan standpoint. If that's okay with you, that makes it pretty straightforward for me. And that is my list, sir. I appreciate the time, and I thank you for the opportunity to go through this. I know there are some folks here that have some additional comments that I would love to hear, if it's okay for them to come forth and speak to that. Then we could wrap up this portion of the project.
Okay.
Bravo. Thank you, Russ.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks for all the time and effort put into that. As Commissioner Clark mentioned, this is now the public input session for inputs on the Civic Center Master Plan. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission on the Civic Center Master Plan?
I would. Are we good? Okay.
Thanks, Russ.
Is it set to go? My name's Jonathan Poole. I live at 128 South Elmwood, right by the hospital, Munson. I'm a strategic advisor by day. I'm an aficionado of anything bicycle by night. I'm the founder of Two Wheel Technique, where I teach mountain bike skills clinics and lead a weekly organized ride for riders who like to challenge themselves technically. And I would like to ask the commission to consider a bike skills park on the Civic Center property. Bike skills park is different than the BMX park, the skate park that's there. Skills parks focus on fundamental biking skills, balance, flow, basic jumping, and well-designed parks invite participation from beginners to experts. Jason is trying to help me here. I have a short video that I'd love to show. I travel regularly to Colorado for business. Multiple communities in Colorado have bike skills parks. Fort Collins, Boulder has a huge one. Superior just had a new one built. Lyons, they're all within an hour of each other. They all have their own skills park as well. The video will show how all ages and all ability levels participate in those. There actually were multiple father-son duos who are participating on these.
How much space do you need?
It can be from a very small space to something significant. You'll see this if we get the video operating. They commonly are the size of a tennis court that can still be effective. They can range to something that's relatively significant. They also can occupy odd-sized spaces that would not be suitable for something else.
Like an amphitheater?
Oh, we would love the amphitheater. We would be able to take what it was and turn it into something. The treed area that's sort of a pie shape adjacent to the existing skate park would be perfect for being able to do this. They also can be scaled from the standpoint of what their cost would be. A simple one, a small one, even from a demonstration standpoint, something that's 20 by 30 feet with volunteer help and donated materials would be free to put it in and experiment with it and see what the response was. The key thing for me, and as you can see, I've got a group here. These are regular riders with me. We span the age range from 6 to 60 who ride regularly with me. The skills park, an appropriately designed skills park, will attract the full age range, the full ability level. They're less intimidating for somebody who's learning. Are we having any luck?
John, is that it, John? Is that your name, John?
Jonathan, yes.
What sort of group size do you get for your rides, your weekly rides?
Excellent question. I started a weekly organized ride in 2007, peak weeks in the summer. So this is every Tuesday. We call it Two Wheel Tuesdays. I get 15 people or so who come and ride with us. In the spring and fall, it's more our core group. But we typically always have at least 6 people. And this is word of mouth with people who know who I am. It's not a publicly known thing. So there's definitely demand for it. I'm immersed in the biking community here, and as I've said, there's strong interest for it. They're really, okay, here we go. If you don't mind watching this.
Will you enlarge it too on there? You can enlarge it right on the,
Bottom right corner.
There you
thank
go.
you.
I may have muted it, Jonathan, if there's a sound.
How do I, there is sound, how do I?
So come near the power button.
Help me out here. It looks like it's loading. While it's loading, maybe pause it and let it load. Oh, load.
One more V.
While we're looking at that, no, let's go back to,
There you go.
it's there. And our audio's not going through.
got time.
Okay, if I can narrate it if you want to just watch. This is the Skills Park in Superior, Colorado. It was just built. It was finished in March. The woman who I'm interviewing is a mom who has a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and she's talking about how she's amazed that her 5-year-old daughter enjoys and is interested in this. This is a beginner who's riding the expert jump line, technically, and that's the biggest feature in the park. He can't jump because he can't go fast enough. It's safe enough for him to do that because of the way it's designed. The other components are geared specifically for beginners. Parks typically are designed where they have different areas, beginner, intermediate, and expert as well. The woman is talking about how the opening weekend there were probably 150 people there, and how the adults and the kids just shared the ability to ride. They took turns. They were respectful for each other. You can see here's a guy who's more of an expert who caught up to the beginner. He just slowed down a little bit, but he has the ability to ride that same line, jump those jumps and berms that you're seeing there as well. You'll see a component here shortly. This is what's called, this is the beginner jump section. So this is a young rider who's relatively skilled. He can pump the rollers and jump the jumps as well. There's another section that's called a pump track, which is essentially a series of rollers and berms. A rider does not pedal to do that well. It's an incredible workout, and it takes a lot of skill to be able to do it. I think that'll show up here shortly.
How much upkeep does it take for one of those?
It depends on how it's designed. So these are out of dirt here, and there's a level of upkeep. This park is still in construction. They need to be watered, so they're going to stay firm. Typically what happens, if you have a strong community behind it, the riders are the ones that do the maintenance. So if there's a divot or whatever, they have a broom and a shovel, they're going to go fix it and maintain it. There are other parks that are of built obstacles that are essentially no maintenance other than what you do around it, the grass or the ground around it. Here's the pump track. So this young man is riding around here. He's not pedaling at all. It's about the size of 2/3 of a tennis court. So he's a good rider. He can ride it relatively quickly and get a ferocious workout doing it. Here's a dad who's doing the same thing. I wish it wasn't pausing on us here. You'll see later in the video, the only things like this are 7 hours away from Traverse City. There's an indoor mountain bike park called Ray's Indoor MTB in Cleveland, Ohio, 7 hours away. And there's groups that regularly drive from here to go experience what Ray's has to offer. The only other thing similar is Houghton, Michigan has what's called their tech trails. So here's a 5-year-old. He's pedaling those rollers. He can't go fast enough to get hurt, but he loves the challenge. So it enables a pro to a beginner to ride the same things if it's well designed.
Have you looked at all of our parks and determined that the Civic Center is the best spot?
What I like about the Civic Center is it's so centrally located that people can ride their bikes to it. They don't have to drive. There's a big population that would love the opportunity to do that.
Where on the property do you think one of these would fit?
My preference would be right adjacent to the existing skate park, since they're complementary. Here are pictures of two different kinds. This is a low-speed balance type. This is in Fort Collins. They used downed trees from creating a soccer field to create those balance lines for people to ride. This is just a portion of that park. These are the trails in Houghton, Michigan, the tech trails. They're within walking distance of downtown. They're essentially low-speed balance lines, so you can see it requires balance for somebody to stay on that. They're designed so they're self-regulating. If you aren't good enough, you can't get on the obstacle to get injured. You have to have a level of proficiency. If a park is designed well, it's relatively self-regulating from that standpoint. So here you can see one that's elevated. The entrance is very skinny. If you aren't good enough to ride that balance, you won't be able to get up on that obstacle. This one is a series of obstacles that are on a trail that just snakes around right adjacent to Michigan Tech. Very, very popular. People from here drive 7 hours to go ride those trails. It's not uncommon. 60-year-olds do as well. Here is Mark, who's sitting with us. This is Ray's Indoor Mountain Bike Park. There's 100,000 square feet of obstacles to ride and a giant old parachute factory. They draw riders from all over the Midwest to be able to ride that. All skills and ability levels, it's segregated where there's beginner, intermediate, and expert, relatively safe. They flow together. Here's an example of a highly technical one that has multiple options for riding. These commonly turn into what I call foot trials, where the little kids want to run around on it on their feet because of the challenge. Locally here, here's an example of our ride. You can see from 50 to 5 are gathering to be able to do this ride. We enjoy riding on the challenges that are here. The rocks at West End Beach are popular for us. The faux rocks that have been left over at the zoo are one of our favorite spots to ride. So here you can see a group of riders, and they're using the breakwall rocks at West End. Here's a 6-year-old who's a regular rider with us, who's learning to ride safely downstairs. In a second will be a 60-year-old who rides regularly with us as well. This is Don Kunkel, who many people know locally for doing the bikes for kids. Here are the faux rocks at the zoo, where the experts are challenging themselves. We love the faux rocks at the zoo because they're just a natural challenge for us. You can see how, depending on how it's constructed, the faux rocks at the zoo require no maintenance at all. It can be constructed where it would be relatively low maintenance. It could be something that's 20 feet by 30 feet to something that is as big as that Superior Bike Park, which was probably 7 tennis courts total in space. Same thing, scalable from the standpoint of what cost would be. Small one could be done volunteer with the strong group that I already have and donated materials to something that can go into the 6 figures easily. So, yes?
Are you thinking about creating this for this summer? Or do you have a business plan put together?
We are open. The intent was, I missed the February meeting because I was in Colorado on business, was to get it in front of the commission so it would be considered. I would love to see it done where it's done scaled, where there's a small test area. You have the ability to see how it is received within the community, how it works from a maintenance standpoint, and then be able to build from there. So I'm open and flexible.
Would you envision with this sport of the growth, of it growing to the point that it would outgrow the Civic Center space?
My experience has been a well-designed small area provides an incredible amount of variety and challenge. And so it isn't that it's got to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Boulder, Colorado, which is the hotbed of everything sports, they're putting one in that's hundreds of acres, but it's geared towards professionals. They're going to have events there and host it there. I don't see the need for that. I think you can do something that would be small, that would fit well and serve for years, be able to have that flexibility.
All right, thank you. Any more questions from the commission? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. And the 4 who are here, 3 who are left with me, there are regular riders with this. They're just here to demonstrate that it's all ages that enjoy and support this.
Great,
So,
we do
thank
appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
All right, any other members of the public wish to address the commission about the Civic Center Master Plan? Okay, very good. The next item is the consent calendar. The rules on the consent calendar: any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Otherwise, if nothing is removed, then it will be received and filed or approved by a single action. So the items on the consent calendar today are the Lutra report matrix, the performance metrics report, scholarship committee report, rules committee report, 2011 budget report as of 4/13, communications from Chuck Korn, Garfield Township Supervisor, and Julie Clark of the Tart Trails, the Parks Commission meeting per diem sheets. Additionally, there are approvals for the joint meeting we had with the Board of Commissioners from March 16th and the Park and Rec Commission meeting from the following night to the March 17th. Is there anyone who would like to see any of those items removed from the consent calendar? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to receive and file all these items?
So moved.
Moved by Doran, second?
Support?
By, is that Clark? All right, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? All right, approved. All right, moving on to old business. 2011 American Legion Baseball Agreement. Scrolling to catch up here.
Al Larson and I have been working with Bob Cooney in order to pull together a baseball agreement. And we got that agreement in its final stages yesterday afternoon, or yesterday morning, I suppose. Al had an opportunity to look over it and saw some grammatical errors and some challenges with it. And basically, this agreement is not done for me to be able to present it to the commission in its final form. It is in the county administrator's office for some additional, essentially some additional proofreading for some grammatical errors. But I do have it here to present to the commission electronically. So one of the things about, and in fact, I'm just going to read Bob's memo related to this agreement, or related to this draft of the agreement. Memos addressed to me. Jason, you asked me to prepare a revised draft of the above referenced agreement incorporating both the comments of American Legion and Parks Commission President Al Larson. I was also asked to provide my own feedback regarding these changes, the changes requested by both parties. In preparing this draft, I have reviewed a markup of the agreement which is undated and reported to have been created at the last meeting of American Legion Baseball Board. I have also reviewed email correspondence from both you and Al Larson regarding the proposed changes. The draft agreement is attached for consideration by the Parks and Recreation Commission. I have provided comments to you to indicate where there exists some disagreements between the parties. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or concerns about this. That leads into this agreement, and this is very similar to the agreement that you've seen before. After our last meeting where this commission voted to approve the agreement as it stood, we sent that on to the American Legion. The American Legion came back with a variety of different changes and things that they would have liked to have seen to the agreement. And that brings us kind of where we're at today with the agreement and Bob's comments, which are on the right-hand side in blue. The objective, the American Legion originally wanted to have this objective be changed to the objective being basically an agreement, simply an agreement between American Legion and Parks and Recreation Commission. Cooney suggests that we leave this unchanged, so it reads, the objective is to provide a youth baseball program for the residents of Grand Traverse County and the surrounding area. Nothing has changed since the last agreement on item number 2. Item number 3, the term has been revised to state the terms of the agreement shall be for the 2011 baseball season and shall be automatically renewed each year unless a written notice of termination is made by either party prior to the first day of November of each subsequent year. This is an agreement between American Legion, going through kind of this negotiation process between Parks and Recreation, myself, Al Larson, and the American Legion. Youth protection, this is kind of one of the sticking points between Parks and Recreation and the American Legion. We've suggested that they follow nationwide background checks for each head coach and each assistant coach per team. The American Legion suggested that they only do statewide checks. So the agreement that I have before you is to continue moving forward with that nationwide background check versus the statewide. Al, do you have any comments on that issue?
Not at this time. As you look through this, as we get the I's dotted and the T's crossed, then I have a tentative meeting set up with Mark Greiner to sit down face-to-face on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock to talk about this. And we'll talk through each point and we'll find out if there are still issues And if not, then, and he thinks it's okay, then I don't know what his process is, if he has to take it to his baseball board or what, but we'll sit down and try to hash this out instead of sending it over going, is this okay? And then he sends it back going, well, almost, and then we send it back going, well, is this okay? And then almost. So I'm trying to expedite this and do this face-to-face. The meeting is tentative at this point. I would invite any commissioners to accompany me to that meeting if you so wish. Is there anyone who would like to go to the meeting Tuesday morning? Chris, you'd like to go? Commissioner Dorier, would you like to attend?
I've offered before. I'm a little confused as to where we are in this whole thing. I mean, this board voted on a final agreement.
The board voted, may I explain?
Go ahead.
We drew up some basic terms, and we sent those terms over in just a bullet basic format, and our understanding was that the American Legion was agreeable to those terms. So we drew up the contract based on those terms and we approved it, sent it over to the American Legion, and they didn't approve it.
I know, and
Yeah.
I saw on the, Commissioner Maxbauer updated the county commissioners that her and Commissioner Henschel attended one of the American Legion meetings, and they were working on additional provisions to the contract. That's what her update to the county commissioners were. And I just object to that. I think that's not the way we ought to proceed. That doesn't answer your question. Your question was do I want to attend the meeting? I'm not available Tuesday. I have to be in Alpena. Otherwise, I would.
Okay.
Well, I want to clarify, Commissioner Henschel and I did attend the American Legion baseball team, or the American Legion baseball committee meeting, and when I said, Commissioner Henschel and I did not input into what the American Legion baseball committee wanted to change about the contract. We sat and listened to what changes they wanted. And for instance, you go to 5A, release of obligation. It says the $10,351 debt obligation. Well, they disagree with that dollar amount, so they changed the word to outstanding. Also, the American Legion baseball committee had not looked at this contract, had not had input into it, and it was their understanding, based upon my presence there, it was their understanding that we were still in negotiation. And this was not a drop-dead contract, that things that they wanted to change or suggest changes could be done.
All right. Commissioner Maxwell, you and I aren't going to agree on this, and I don't mean to sidetrack the conversation here. That was probably inappropriate of me. I don't like the way this unfolded. I think possibly we've got some violation of the Open Meetings Act. I'm not sure of that. But this body voted on a contract with the understanding that there was a verbal agreement from the American Legion. Apparently there wasn't. Things happen. So we need to move on. We need to get an agreement. You all heard me in our joint meeting. I'm committed to making this work. It's difficult to make it work when it's a moving target. That's my only point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Continue, Jason.
Payment of fees, Cooney's comment reads, I did not alter this paragraph regarding fees because there seems to be no consensus on this issue. American Legion suggested adding the following sentence, a mutually agreeable cost basis for the maintenance shall be agreed upon by both parties. It is my opinion that both the original and revised methods of computing fees are vague and would be difficult to enforce by either party. Suggest coming up with specific rate that is agreeable to both parties. This is a challenging thing to do. The Board of Commissioners voted to, and it states right in their resolution, to charge half of the actual cost associated with the baseball program. And apparently, I don't know where the confusion is on this issue, but it's suggested that we come up with some other rate here between the two parties.
Just a little input. I would suggest very quickly on Tuesday that what you offer them is half the rate that other people pay, the YMCA, and other users, and that's a great deal.
I understand what you're saying. The Board of Commissioners said half the actual cost, and if they meant something different than that, I'd be hesitant to take the freedom to interpret that they meant something different than what they said.
Well, I think the main point here is to get an agreement between us, the Parks Commission, and the American Legion. I would think they would agree to that. If not, I'm not sure what they're looking for. That's a pretty good deal.
Are you taking Bob Cooney with you to this meeting on Tuesday?
You ought to.
I have not talked with Bob yet about that.
If he can't make it, maybe he could be available by telephone for you to consult with, but I think Jason hasn't gone through it all, but except for that point, do we have a firm recommendation from our legal counsel as to what the contract should say?
There are other items he states in here that we should continue to work on. He has not given us a strong recommendation because there are a few other items in here that he suggests language to come up with some other language. And I think that's the intent, and correct me if I'm wrong, Al, or Commissioner Larson, that's the intent of the meeting on Tuesday, is to come up with some other mutually agreeable language before drafting this proposal again.
The comments that they sent over were it would be easy to take them out of context simply because they were essentially notes in the margin. And so I don't want to pretend that I know exactly what they meant by that. And so we'll sit down and we'll talk that out and see if it's an issue. Maybe the cost isn't an issue. Maybe just the vagueness is the issue. Maybe it's too much. I'm not sure.
I'd like this thing, though, to move ahead fairly quickly without having to come back to a meeting of this commission. Could we authorize you, Al, President, to sign a contract with the American Legion if it is approved, if the wording is approved by our legal counsel, Bob Cooney? You negotiate on Tuesday, take it back to Cooney. If he says the language is okay, then go ahead and sign.
I would support that.
Rebecca?
I know that in our last meeting that it was talked about that it was verbally agreed upon. What happened between where it was verbally agreed upon to where it was presented that all of this came up?
It's either miscommunication or it's an internal issue to the American Legion. My guess is, it doesn't matter what my guess is. We understood the message from Mark Reiner to be one thing, and then it came back as something different, and so there was a miscommunication at some level. We understood that they were okay with the terms that we presented, and then we wrote it up, and then they weren't okay with the terms that we wrote up. Bill?
I support Commissioner Doran's thought. I think it's a good idea, and I think it is important. I remember talking to you, Al. I think it's a really good idea to get Mr. Cooney with you. There are legal obligations that he needs to look out for on the behalf of the county. And there's reasons why he wrote this, the first draft, the way he wrote it. And he explained that to all of us at the joint meeting. And some of those reasons have been ignored in this draft here. I think it's important that they hear what some of those reasons are. I think probably we can, on the majority of them, we can work things out. But it would be a good idea to have him with you, or at least on the phone, like Commissioner Doran said. I also support the idea of authorizing you to go ahead and execute a contract on our behalf, maybe with some understandings on how we feel on certain issues, like the background check. I feel very strongly on the background check. I'm not sure what the rest of the commission thinks about that, but the typical thing to do is to do a nationwide search. I don't understand why that's a big deal. And that's what I would hope would come out in that conversation.
I agree. I hope that would come out.
We've already, well, I don't want to give away the story here, but that we need to work that out. We need to run this in the best interest of the citizens of Grand Traverse County, and that's a nationwide check. I'm sorry.
Okay. Commissioner Max Bauer?
Well, Commissioner Doyer, first of all, there was no Open Meetings Act violation. Commissioner Henschel and I sat and listened to a baseball committee discuss the contract. The reason that they stated, they don't, it's an interpretation of what type of background check you want them to do. You can get a statewide background check, and then you can go to the Department of Human Services and get another background check that includes somewhat of a nationwide search. And we've done it at the Commission on Aging Board. And they feel that that meets the criteria. So, and I will tell you that most of the county board agrees with them.
Well, I will make a motion to authorize the president to execute an agreement with the American Legion regarding baseball in a form that is approved by legal counsel Robert Cooney.
And I'll support that.
Mr. Chair, is there a mechanism that allows the County Board of Commissioners to also give their blessing, as we are a subservient board to the County Board of Commissioners? We are an agent of the County Board of Commissioners. I'd like to have them weigh in and make sure it's got their blessing. That's how we got here in the first place, I believe. Is there some kind of mechanism that Cooney's automatically represents the interests of the county, so maybe that's a given? I just want to have that discussion. Does it have to go to the Board of Commissioners as well?
Could I?
Hold on, I'll take care of some details here. All right, the motion, as I understand it, tell me if you agree with these words, to authorize the president to execute a contract with American Legion under advisement from the county attorney.
Yeah, in a form as approved by.
In a form as approved by the county attorney. All right, do you have that, Marilyn?
Motion to authorize the president to execute a contract with American Legion, and I don't have the rest.
In a form as approved by the county attorney.
Okay.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. All right.
The discussion, let me clarify, it just dawned on me, there is a mechanism. The Board of Commissioners already weighed in on this by 3 members asking it to be on their agenda. So maybe that's the mechanism that allows them to change anything if they're uncomfortable with it.
That was going to be my response.
Okay.
That's how it's worked, that's how the resolution's worded, that's how it's supposed to work.
Okay.
We act, and if there's something that we do that they don't like, there's a very good mechanism for them to undo it. And that's kind of what they did, pretty clumsily, with the first go-around. And it'd be nice if we could avoid that again.
Okay.
But, just back on the motion itself, I'll support the motion. Yeah, I will. I'll support the motion, and that's it, the end of my comment.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries that authorizes the president to execute a contract with American Legion in a form as approved by the county attorney. All right. As we go through that document, then it is important that I understand what the commission is willing to compromise on or not. And my opinion, if you'll scroll up just a little bit, Jason, then if I can hijack your presentation.
By all means.
All the way to the top, and I won't go through it. Paragraph 1 is a non-issue. It's just words on the paper. It doesn't change anything of what anybody has to do to anybody. Item 3, the term, originally American Legion came back with a request that there be 365 days notice or something like that for terminating the contract by either party. Well, that's very awkward if they want to terminate the agreement because they just can't get enough, workers or whatever. Well, you can't. You have to run it for another year before you can terminate. That didn't make any sense to me. and it isn't that we want to pull the plug on them in an instant, that's not it at all. So we set a date of November 1st, which allows enough time after a season goes to sit back and assess, and how did the season go, and how can it go next year? Do we want to go forward with this? And then we can sit down and talk about it. If either party has a problem by November 1st, well, that gives plenty of time to sit down and talk about it, rather than tying our hands with a year-long suspense date. We have no intention of pulling the rug out from under their feet on this. We want this to go on as long as they want it to go on and are successful. And this is not a contract. We are going to find some little detail, and we're going to turn the lights out on them. That's my opinion on this one. For the youth protection, the nationwide background check, if they feel that what they're doing is a nationwide background check, I'm fine with that, but the words they put were statewide background check, and I will not sign a contract with my name on it that doesn't have nationwide contract checks. If the commission wants to approve it, fine, you can do that, but not with my name on the contract. I've made that clear at Wednesday's meeting, and that is non-negotiable for me. Does the commission feel differently?
Absolutely not.
All right. Paragraph D there, that's really a non-issue. That's just about the survey. That's fine what they did. The conflict resolution plan.
Comment reads, American Legion draft included a phrase, program rule number 8 is in effect for all
Right.
parties. I do not know what program rule number 8 is, and no one has been able to explain that to me. That's something that American Legion put in this contract that was their suggestion. I've looked through their documents and have found nothing related to program rule number 8. I emailed Neil Horning, the program director for American Legion Baseball, on April 8th, asking for clarification on that. Neil has still not responded to any contact from me since April 8th.
So my objective with that is simply that they have a process. I don't care what their process is. If a parent has a problem, if a kid has a problem, if a coach has a problem, they just have a mechanism by which to address the problem. They don't have to solve the problem. They just have to have a mechanism. Go talk to this guy, and then this guy either takes it to the committee or does something. They just need a mechanism for that. That's all I care about. Scroll down. Hotline, that's all solved, no issue there. Release of obligation, that's fine if, I don't care about that. Baseball fields, they wanted a change in the words, that was fine with me. We took their words, that's all good. Liability of insurance, again, they actually made the language more restrictive than what we offered them, so their words are fine. We've got that in there, no problem. Dispute resolution.
The comment is replaced executive board with baseball board upon request of American Legion, as well as the American Legion added language requiring participation of at least one county commissioner for dispute resolution.
And that was fine. I have no problem with that. If we end up at loggerheads over some issue, we'll sit down and talk, and it just defines the representation. That's all good. No problem there.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
Somehow we need to get the American Legion to deal with the Parks and Recreation Commission as a regular course of business.
I agree that is an important message that I should bring to them. There are a few times when they really wanted to change the language from Parks and Rec Department or Commission to, and that's really not the right way to be. Now, there are serious trust issues that we have going on, and I hope that a face-to-face meeting will alleviate that, and they don't have to try to sidestep us. They can't sidestep us because it's our department, and so we're relevant. We're here, and we are legally responsible for these issues. They can't just go around us.
Well, one thought I had that I shared with you, and I don't mean to stop your progression here, but we may want to form some very short-term ad hoc committee to kind of oversee this for this first season, just to make sure that the communication is what it needs to be. Just a thought. Initially, I kind of objected to this because I can see where they're going. But if it's okay with you, then I'll support it.
Okay.
Actually, I can speak a little bit to this. Their intent was to keep the lines of communication more open. They felt that adding a county commissioner onto the dispute resolution would avoid the exact thing that happened the last time, where the county board just stepped in. And they felt by adding a county commissioner in the dispute resolution, it would keep the lines between all three parties, the county board, the parks board, and the baseball board, open.
Okay.
That was the only intent.
Continue to scroll. They changed the wording on the bottom of paragraph 10. I really don't have an issue with that. It's just legal language.
If Cooney will buy that.
Item 16, this is a point of contention. They wanted to change, American Legion shall make no alteration or improvements to the premises without prior written approval. We had the Parks Department, they wanted Grand Traverse County. Again, I felt like that was, they really want to sidestep our commission. We're responsible for the facility. It's got to come through us. Really non-negotiable. I don't expect them to be hard over on this one. They're not going to make improvements or modifications to the premises, so I don't expect this to be an argument, but I'm not going to give this one away.
Item 19, the comment from, Cooney's comment reads.
Yeah, I understand it. What they wanted was, we have this is, this is typical legal language. This is the whole agreement, nothing but the agreement, and so help me God and all that. And then their comment was, we'd like to go back to the 1952 agreement, which is totally contrary to the entire purpose of writing out the contract. So I don't know what it is they want from the 1952 contract. Jason was unable to find a contract from 1952. There's a 1957 contract. It doesn't make any sense. They weren't clear about what they wanted, and so I'm unsure of what their point is. If they have points and they want to put them in there, I'm willing to talk about it, but I'm certainly not going to agree to include language that references a 1952 document that we haven't even looked at. Is there anything else, Jason, on that one, that point?
No, that sums it up.
The rest of it's just legal language, and that's my position on going to this meeting on Tuesday morning. Are there any other comments or inputs for that?
I want to
Okay.
thank you for your hard work on this. I know it's been frustrating.
3 months
for
out of
you.
my life.
For you and Jason both. And I just hope that we can get this thing going, that we can make it work, and that we can keep the politics out of youth baseball, because it doesn't belong there.
Sure doesn't.
All right, very good. All right, moving along. I have made an egregious error, and I skipped over, by accident, additions to the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda tonight?
I did want to bring up just one, as far as the fundraising event for the Civic Center.
You'd like to add an item to the
July or
agenda?
August, yes,
And the item would be
fundraiser event.
fundraiser event. Okay, I would also like to add a follow-up from our fee structure meeting. I thought that was on the agenda, my apologies. I've got some motions for that, so fee structures. All right, now, so the motion is to add first fundraiser event to the agenda that's been moved by Cass. Is there a second to that?
I'll support it.
Seconded by Carsons. Any discussion?
I would just want to apologize to the commission and anybody who might be up there talking when I have to leave at 8:30.
Okay, very good. Any discussion on the motion to add fundraiser event to the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. The next motion is to add fee structures to the agenda, moved by Larson, seconded by?
Clark.
Clark, okay. Any discussion?
You usurped my...
All right, all in favor? Commissioner
No,
Doria?
not on that, go ahead.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, those two items will be added. Fundraiser event and fee structures will be added to the bottom of new business, items 5 and 6 respectively.
Mr. President?
Yes,
Could I add one more?
please.
I think we need a brief discussion of our budget, our 2011 budget.
Okay, 2011 budget. It's been moved by Doria to add 2011 budget to the agenda. Is there a second?
Support.
Support from McKellier. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 2011 budget is added as new business, item number 7. All right, I apologize for that. Next is NER update.
Good evening. My name is Ben Purdy. I work at the Grand Traverse Conservation District. We manage the Natural Education Reserve on behalf of the county. And I just wanted to give the commissioners a brief update of some of the activities that we have going on out there. as the weather starts to change, knock on wood.
Yeah.
We'll be getting busier and busier, and I just wanted to give you a little update about what we've got coming up on the parkland. Of course, we have the Nature Center facility there on the parkland, and we had a very successful spring break week. We had organized programs every day of the week that students were off that week, and I believe we had over 600 attendees during that week, which we were really happy with. Our preschool program continues to be popular. That's a weekly event for kids ages 3 to 5. We're continuing to work on our K through 12 NEST program. That's nature education for students and teachers. And as the school year begins to wrap up, we've been getting more and more requests for field trips and activities out at the Nature Center. So we're looking forward to those. Also, we're gearing up for our summer day camp program. We're expecting it to be quite a bit bigger than our program last year. And so if anybody knows of youngsters that might be looking for some fun day nature activities this summer, by all means have them get in touch with us and we'll be happy to sign them up. All this information too is on our website. As far as the parkland, tomorrow we've got a bottomlands work bee. It's scheduled for the Boardman Pond bottomlands. We're going to be planting some native tree species out there and also installing the floating loon platform for the season. If anybody wants to come out and get some dirt under their nails, we'll be meeting at the Lone Pine Trailhead at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. May not be great weather for us, but certainly good for the seedlings, cool, moist soil conditions. We're expecting a high success rate there. Also along those lines, we continue to work with MacTech and the implementation team to develop a bottomlands management plan for both Boardman and Sabin ponds. Specifically, we're focusing on the recreational component of that plan, as well as invasive species monitoring and control. Other than that, we've just got lots of spring cleanup going on, repairing fencing around trailheads, excuse me, picking up trash from the wintertime. We're also installing our new informational posters at all of the trailhead kiosks. We have seasonal posters that rotate, provide different information that's relevant to the current season of the year. So all of those have been changed this week. We're also in the process of applying for several DEQ permits for the property. One is a overlook on the Boardman River. It's actually on the Garfield-owned portion, just north of the Natural Education Reserve, but that's going to be an important erosion control measure, provide access to the river without trampling the vegetation on the stream banks, as well as provide an overlook and fishing platform. And the other big project that we're really excited about is the Fox Den Boardwalk replacement. We just recently secured the final $8,000 required for that project, so that brings our total to $34,000 secured for that. That's going to be almost 1,000 feet of boardwalk replaced, probably the most popular boardwalk on the park, and we're real excited to get that replaced this summer at no cost to the county. Yes.
Are you going to keep it the same width, Ben, or is it going to be a little wider?
That's one of the drawbacks of the current design. It's only about 24 inches wide, and especially in the wintertime, the snow develops a crown, and it's very hard to stay on top it's almost unusable for several months out of the year. Also, when you're leading a group of school kids out there, they have to be single file. And so if you have 50 kids, that's quite a long line, and it's hard for the kids in back to hear the instruction that's taking place. So the new boardwalk will be 6 feet wide. It'll allow people to pass. Because it's 1,000 feet long, you can't see from end to end. And so if you meet somebody in the middle, currently, it's hard to get around. This will allow comfortable passage from multi-direction traffic. It'll be usable year-round, and also allow the school groups to bunch closer and receive better instruction, as well as improving safety.
I have another question. Maybe you can't answer it, but I'd like to get it planted in your head. When Sabin impoundment is reduced down to a river, will there be an opportunity for a bike trail to run from the dam to the next dam, which is
Boardman, yeah, Boardman and Keystone Dam. I believe so. I have not seen any good bathymetric maps or any good guess of what the contours of the land are going to be once the water goes away. But we can look a little bit at where Keystone Dam washed out in 1961. There's currently a nice trail that runs along the river there, which previously would have been flooded. Also just downstream from Sabin to the Y, we've got that wide, broad floodplain with very little elevation change. So that's one of the things that we're looking at with this bottomlands management plan. But I would anticipate the opportunity to develop a continuous trail from South Airport Road all the way to Beitner that more or less follows the river.
That would be a tremendous advancement and opportunity on our hopefully eventual march to Kingsley with the trail.
The portion that he just spoke of, is that part of the Education Nature Reserve, or is it not?
It is. What's currently under Sabin Pond, yes.
Because originally that Education Nature Reserve, was that meant to be a transportation corridor or a wildlife corridor?
It's specifically set aside for natural education, so that implies some human use.
Yes, but not as a transportation corridor.
Not specifically, no.
And so my understanding is that those areas set aside for nature, that if you're going to have a bicycle trail through it, it should be on the periphery rather than in the choicest parts. And if you do a Christmas bird count or any bird count any time of the year, the person who gets the Boardman Valley gets the most species, and so it's a preferred place for wildlife. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to see a bicycle trail on the periphery and not necessarily right close to the river.
Mm-hmm.
The wildlife can't turn on a faucet, and they need access to that river.
Sure.
And so, to me, that would be the most important concern, given that that is an Education Nature Reserve.
Sure.
For wildlife primarily and for our education, rather than primarily a transportation corridor.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, we definitely have to strike that balance between use and the resource. We have to take in lots of things into consideration, such as topography and what's feasible for trails. Also, we have to take into account user experience out on the trail, because we've found time and time again that if you don't build a trail where people want to go, they will make their own trails to get there. And then you have unmanaged use and wander paths helter-skelter through the habitat. So lots of different things, and certainly we don't have a proposed trail at this point that follows the river, but it's definitely one of the options we're looking at. There's several different possible routes to use that north-south Natural Education Reserve corridor. Any other questions over here? So I think that's all I have. I also wanted to extend an invitation to the commissioners to come on out as the weather warms up to the Nature Center. Lots of good stuff going out there that you should all be proud of happening on your parkland. And I'd love the opportunity to familiarize you all with it and answer any questions that you may have at that time. So if that's something you'd like to do, let Jason know, and we'll set up a time and date to get that done. Thank you. I'll stay here for the NER easement next.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item is the NER easement.
Okay, this is essentially the same document you saw at last month's meeting. I asked Consumers Power to go back and make a few changes specifically to allow a trail corridor to be placed on the easement, and they've included that language. They've also included the document for the fee for this easement. And so, again, no real changes. The impact should be very minimal on wildlife and habitat, and it does offer up the opportunity for a future trail connection linkage south to Kingsley in the future. So I and the Natural Education Reserve Advisory Committee are in support of this easement at this time.
Okay, and Jason, go ahead.
Within your packet, I put a recommendation that a motion be made to provide the easement as suggested in this agreement, and Consumers Energy will compensate Grand Traverse County $2,000 for the easement. I should have added to that. I would recommend a motion to be made on this, pending approval by Bob Cooney. So it's all right for I would recommend this board approve, and then have Cooney ensure that it's all the i's are dotted, t's are crossed.
Now, Ben, as I see that the signature block on there is for the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, and so legally, what do you need from us?
That line should actually be President of the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what the mechanism is at the county level. I was just trying to facilitate the discussion between consumers and the county here.
Okay. Do you have any insight on that, Commissioner McNamara?
It should be you.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we would need to amend that contract to include the signature block for the president, the president of the Parks and Rec Commission. I much prefer chair.
Don't get carried away there.
Okay, so then we would be the final approval authority for this. We approve it and it's a done deal.
Right. I would
Okay.
I would recommend your motion be to approve this easement in the amount of being compensated $2,000 pending approval of Bob Cooney.
Okay, we can do that. So can I have that motion from a commission member, please?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, so Bob Carsons makes the motion that to provide the easement as, the recommendation is to approve the easement as suggested in agreement MI 70s, planning for lots of growth there, 2431 GRT, and Consumers Energy will compensate Grand Traverse County $2,000 for the easement. Final approval, get the right words for that. All right, I'm sorry, Marilyn, I'm going to change my words now.
Right.
To approve the easement pending approval from county attorney, as suggested in agreement MI 2431 GRT, and Consumers Energy will compensate Grand Traverse County $2,000 for the easement. Do you agree with that wording, Bob?
Yes.
Okay, seconded by
Yes.
Dwyer. Okay. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, I had three questions. One was legal counsel's review, so I understand this is contingent upon that. It's the last time you brought this to the board, I wasn't there, but I was able to look at the video, and it appeared informally the Conservation District Board was in agreement. Do you have a formal agreement from the Conservation District Board on this? And I heard you say you're a member of the NER advisory group.
I provide staff support to the NER Advisory Committee, and they are the body that has reviewed this and approved it. And I don't have a formal document. Our chair has been absent down south for the past two meetings, and that's the reason. But everybody has discussed it, and there's been consensus.
Your word is good enough, but
Okay.
last time you brought this, you said individual conversations was that you believed people were in agreement, but now you've got a formal recommendation. And did that go before the board of the Conservation District?
Not the Conservation District, but the Natural Education Reserve Advisory Committee. We actually had a meeting on Tuesday of this week.
Okay.
And so they reviewed it again at that time.
And it was their unanimous recommendation to proceed
Yes.
with it? Okay. Final question, Mr. Chair, was how was the $2,000 value arrived at?
It's kind of our standard fee on a tap, and that's all we're doing is tapping an existing line there. I want you to look at the survey that shows that.
That's not,
And we're going a total of, what, 80 feet long, 82 maybe, who knows? We feel it's very fair, and I have a deed here in 1969, we gave that land for $1 to you.
Yes, and we got the dams. We've gone over that.
Can I add a point? If we figured it out on line cost and length of line cost, it'd be considerably less.
okay, that's what all I was looking for. Is it consistent with past easements that have been
Actually,
provided?
it's a little higher.
Okay.
It's okay.
It's
We
a
need the money.
relatively easy thing for such a short distance. Very difficult decision for a longer distance where the easement, I mean, really gives the property, full use of the property away while maintaining responsibility for the property. So this is a relatively easy one, but these would be tough. I hope we don't see a lot of them.
I just have one question, and maybe it was discussed last time, but the $2,000, does that go to the Parks and Recreation budget or the general fund?
As I understand it, it all goes into the county's treasury. It shows up, it will show up on our budget sheet as a revenue. Jason, you're cringing.
The county treasurer is kind of one of the checks and balances we have to ensure that the revenues coming into our department are the appropriate revenues. It simply goes to the treasurer kind of as an accounting, for more of an accounting purpose, and then he allocates that specifically to the 208 fund, which is the Parks and Recreation Fund.
Thank you. That's my other question.
Separate from the general fund. So he takes it in, but it doesn't go to the county general fund and then get siphoned down to Parks and Recreation. He takes it in, goes directly into Fund 208.
So in essence, yes, we get the money. Yes. Rebecca?
If this is all approved, when would this start? Do you have kind of a start date on?
Probably within the next 2 years.
Oh. Not in the next, you're thinking 2 years is when it will?
I'm guessing with the way our budgets have been and everything else, probably within the next couple of years. That's when we also, a lot of this is based upon the need for the electrical substation that's going to be built away from this property. Sorry. It'll be based upon the need for the service out there. And that's projected for 2013.
So legal counsel's got some time to get back on this to you.
We have a little bit of time. We'd like to get things ironed out because this will affect our route. So.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? All right, Marilyn, can you please read the motion one more time?
Motion to approve the easement pending approval of the county attorney as suggested in the agreement number. So, and you've read that off. And Consumers Energy will compensate Grand Traverse County $2,000 for the easement.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, pool RFQ.
Okay. First of all, on page 62, Marilyn, there are a couple changes that I think we need to make to the minutes. One is at the top of the page, there's, well, actually, it's in the middle of the page, I'm sorry. When we made the motion to approve the minutes from the October 28th meeting, all three of us voted yes. So that just needs to be changed. It says approved unanimous. Oh, I see. I'm not, never mind. Never mind. Rosanna, Dana. Okay. What we decided on for the RFQ is two real changes. One is, in the original RFQ, Jason had both himself and Kim Moore as people to address questions to regarding the RFQ. I took out Kim Moore and just made Jason the sole contact. I really do believe, and certainly this commission can feel differently, but I really do believe that having one contact person is less confusing and will eliminate two different answers from two different people. So, and I really do feel that the director ought to be the sole contact. So I put that in there. And the other change I made was I left the maintenance under the facilities department, which is what happens now. When something breaks at the pool, the facilities department comes in and fixes it. We're paying those costs now anyway. Plus, we have other components, mechanical components in the building, and I would not expect a pool operator to come in and necessarily know if they mess with this pump, how it might affect something in Howe Arena. So that was my feeling on that. Plus, I think it would be easier for us to get responses for a pool operator if we don't put that in there. I just can't imagine somebody that wants to operate a pool wants to be faced with a bunch of mechanics that they know nothing about. So those were only the real two changes that I made. Yes.
Just from reading your report here, your minutes, apparently there is a draft?
Yes, I gave it to Jason that day. He has it.
Are we going to see that at some point?
I hope so. I told Jason I asked Jason to please review it, and if he saw something that he didn't like, he certainly should feel free to change it and bring those changes to us, and then we can agree to send it out. So
he was part of the original committee, though, correct?
Yes, and he was there.
Okay.
So I'm just waiting for him to go through it, and if there's anything that jumps out at him, he can change it and bring it to us when he's ready. I did meet with the county administrator on Monday at 9 o'clock, and he suggested that we have a lengthy window for responses. So he did ask me, he said, you know, how many weeks do you have for people to respond in your RFQ? And I said, I really left that up to Jason. I told him to go ahead and pick a date. And I have made some preliminary contacts with USA Swimming, the American Swim Coaches Association, U.S. Masters Swimming, the High School College Association of Swim Coaches, and the College Association of Coaches to ask about advertising, just to find out what publications they have that we might consider when we put this out there in the public.
All right, so then the next step, as I understand it, is Jason will complete his review and send that out
to us.
For us to look at, and then what happens next?
Well, we would advertise. We would we would post the RFQ as we do at the county. Aquatics International Magazine, USMS Magazine, you know, mailing lists. I've got a number of ideas. But I will be quite honest. And I said this during the RFQ committee, subcommittee meeting. I'm not particularly optimistic. We're demographically not in a good spot to find a pool operator. I think if we were in a metropolitan area, we would have a better chance. But Scott Joseph did say, you know, we might be pleasantly surprised. We'll see what happens.
Commissioner Dwyer?
Yeah, I think what your question was looking for is that it's going to come to this body for approval before it goes out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
I have just a question. I just have been impressed with the things that Kim Moore has been doing with the Luther program. And so if this pool RFQ is successful and what have you, that her position would go away then, is that correct?
Probably.
She's doing a lot of neat things that are being successful, or just...
Absolutely. All part of the discussion when the RFQ comes in front of us.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes. Our silence is not, it was just a report from the RFQ committee today. Okay. Anything else? All right. Very good. Next item is new business, customer, yes.
I miss some people, and I don't know who they are. My wife said, usually at the bottom of my time.
Okay.
Can't have
I
mine.
have
And then,
mine.
we hope to be on your
Good.
business sometime, but I want you to
Thanks, Bob.
just,
I have,
you have one?
yeah.
Thank
Make
you.
sure that you just look at it.
I got
We're going to hopefully come before you and talk about it. So,
We appreciate you showing up tonight.
yeah.
Thank you.
I had a lot of good memories in this room. It's sort of fun to be back.
Thank you very much. All right, next item, customer information release policy.
On page 63 and 64, and continuing to 65 and 66, I have some information there related to customer information release policy. Through this continuing debate, discussion, I guess, regarding the 2011 baseball season, our department was asked to provide contact information for all of the players associated with our baseball program. It's been kind of a long-standing practice within our department that we do not provide customer contact to any outside organizations. And we do that out of respect for our customers' confidentiality in an effort to provide positive customer service in order to properly protect our customers from unnecessary solicitations, emails, etc. We were asked to provide this information. I said I would not provide it unless it was approved, unless an opinion was offered by Bob Cooney. Bob's opinion came back and he said there really isn't a rule, a steadfast rule on this, and it's a matter of court. It depends on the court case. If we were to go to court by not providing information associated with customer information, especially if it were requested via the Freedom of Information Act. His opinion does state, you may want to seek some general direction from your commission about whether they want to protect lists as who is a season pass holder for swimming, etc. He also states, I will support the commission's decision if they prefer not to give out such lists. Based on that comment, I'm looking for some direction from this board, and I would recommend a policy that states protecting customer information is a priority for Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation. We will not provide our customers' contact information to any organization unless that organization is an agent of Grand Traverse County. Before I get done, I wanted to let this commission know, because we did not have a policy, I did turn over the last names, addresses, and the primary contact or primary phone number for the folks on our list, or the folks that we had in our roster for last year. But I also gave those customers 24 hours notice to request their information be totally redacted as well. So I would recommend that a policy be voted on, a motion and vote be made on that policy.
Can I have a motion from a commissioner on this? All right, I'll make the motion that the commission enacts the following policy. Protecting customer information is a priority for Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation. We will not provide our customers' contact information to any organization unless that organization is an agent of Grand Traverse County.
I'll second it.
All right. Discussion. Commissioner McKelvey.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Two questions, I guess, directed towards the director. Number one, as stated in the motion, if this is given to an agent of the county, could that agent of the county, I'm an agent of the county, and if you were to give this information to me and I was FOIA'd, I would have to release that information. So I have an issue with that statement in the motion, because once you release it to an agent, it could be released publicly, as I gave you the example. That's one of two questions. The second question, do you currently ask your customers if any of the information they're providing is private or confidential and should not be disclosed?
No, typically that conversation happens in a reverse manner, where we'll ask information that the customer feels as though isn't necessary for us to have. An example being the underwater egg hunt that we have coming up. We ask for addresses. Oftentimes customers will say, why do you need my address? I'm just buying a ticket for this program. And we tell them, we need this information for a variety of different reasons. But we always reassure them that we're not going to pass out that information. We're not going to use that information for junk emails from us. We're not going to use it for junk. We're not going to distribute that list to outside organizations that may start spamming or sending junk mail to them. So typically we do have that conversation quite often, but it typically comes from a different motive. Does that answer your question?
That was one of the questions. The other question is, what's your response to if it's released to an agent, it becomes public information?
My thought process on that was in thinking agent of Grand Traverse County, if the Human Resources Department needed that information for some reason, or if County Administrator's Office needed that information for some reason, that they would act appropriately with that information. And I would hope that no agent of Grand Traverse County would engage in spamming or sending junk mail to a variety of different, to any of our customers. I'm open to changing that wording if you have something to offer.
That's a start. That clarifies it. So you're defining the word agent, and you referenced administration and HR. I'm just, when I saw that word, I thought any of the some 30 departments, mine being one of them, could receive that, and use it. So finally, then, now that you've answered the two questions, my position on this is, we're a public body. The work we do is public work. It should be transparent. So I'm trying to find some other kind of mechanism where we can still be public and still abide by FOIA rules and not be subjected to lawsuits by not complying by FOIA rules and really being transparent. Perhaps if there is private information, you have a mechanism where the customers could indicate, this is private. With the exception of course, there's a law that any Social Security numbers would be blanked out. You're only asking for the last 4 digits or something to that effect. So, of course, we wouldn't be releasing that kind of private information. I just have a problem with hiding information.
Commissioner Dwyer, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't object to this per se. I think we've overcomplicated a relatively simple situation. I think the thing to do, given that we're transferring leadership of the baseball program from us to American Legion, I think the thing to do would have been to write, we have an email database, correct, for all of the participants from the 2010 program. I think we could have sent them all an email that explained that we're not going to run the program, American Legion is. We hope that you participate in it. We hope you have a nice summer baseball season. Here's how you contact the American Legion. And I think that would have fulfilled the need without the necessity of developing a policy. But I'll support the policy if that's what we want to do.
I do too. We offered that and they didn't accept the offer. American Legion didn't accept the offer.
I'd like to add in, we were proactive. I offered that on January 29th.
Because see, we are in a position here where we're giving out people's phone numbers, right? I mean, you said you redacted. I'm not exactly sure what.
I blanked out all first names, any additional email addresses or secondary phone numbers. I did give them primary, what people identified as their primary phone number.
No. All right. Okay. It's done.
I share some of the same concerns that the Drain Commissioner says, that we are a public body. And what bothers me is Mr. Cooney's sentence here where it says failure to disclose could possibly result in a lawsuit. How many requests do you get for information a year? I would prefer just to have it be, a staff judgment call rather than a policy. I think there are some instances where, yeah, you might give out information.
Well, I guess my answer to that would be, it seems that in the American Legion baseball situation, the staff made a judgment, and then my understanding is there was significant pressure from the Board of Commissioners that his judgment was wrong and that he was to send out the information. So what he's looking for is a policy that can allow him, that will back up his judgment that we shouldn't send those out. I'm a little unclear why the American Legion didn't have that information already from previous years, but that's beside the point. It became a big, it seemed to be a battle of wills over the names of these little kids who were playing baseball, and it didn't make any sense. As a general policy, I don't think we should release people's information without their permission, and we don't have a great mechanism for achieving that, and it's our information. So
Just for the record, I want to withdraw my previous comments. I'll support the motion.
Okay. Any other comments? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All right, then the motion stays as originally presented, that the commission enact the following policy: protecting customer information is a priority for Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation. We will not provide our customers' contact information to any organization unless that organization is an agent of Grand Traverse County. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call, please, Marilyn.
Bob Karstens,
Aye.
Russell Clark,
Yes.
Peter's left. Bill Dorier,
Aye.
Al Larson,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
Chris Maxbauer,
No.
Kevin McCallier,
Nay.
Dave Taylor,
No.
6 against 3.
All right, motion carries. All right, next item, commissioner contact information.
Yes, that would be me. I just wanted to let everybody know that the county board is in the process of putting the people that serve on our boards, putting their names and contact information on the web. We had an ad hoc committee that was meeting regularly towards the end of last year, and the ad hoc committee felt very strongly that if a person is sitting on a board and is serving the public, then they ought to have contact information out there so that the public can contact them. So I just wanted to let everybody know that the county board, or the county administration, is in the process of putting contact information out on the web.
All right, is that just informative, or would you like to make a motion?
No, it's just information.
Okay. All right, very good. Any comments? All right. Next item is the Meyer property.
That would be me again. I did ask Jason last month that you include those pictures, copies of those pictures. But be that as it may, it's really not that important. We have, as many of you know, barns out on the Meyer property, and they have tractors, cars, hay, a number of different things in these barns. What happened when Joe Meyer passed, he left his personal property to Grand Traverse County. And that stuff has been sitting in those barns. I have to tell you, that hay is nothing but a torch waiting to be lit. That stuff has been sitting in those barns for years, just sitting there. And I would like this commission next month to consider putting that personal property up for auction. I did have a conversation with Bob Cooney today, and Bob said that there is an agreement where between the parks and Joe Meyer, where this property would be used for the public good. And I think it would be a wonderful, Bob also told me that he thought that the value of the property is only $29,000, $30,000, approximately in that range. That's according to an auctioneer. And I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity. I mean, I can't imagine why we've been sitting on hay for 5 years, but if we could auction off that personal property, that would clean up those barns, and at the same time it would raise funds for perhaps improvements on the Meyer property. I know Commissioner Clark has had some wonderful plans for some landscaping out there, some ideas for that. I just don't like us sitting on our assets, and we've been doing it for years. So that's my spiel.
Okay, you want a motion with that then?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that next month we consider having an auction and disposing of the personal property that's on the Meyer property in the barns.
I'm in support for discussion. I'd like to hear if the director has any conflict with that.
I'll be honest, we've been sitting on this personal property for several years. And we didn't, frankly, our department didn't plan real well for taking on this piece of property and planning for what we're going to do with all the personal property that are inside the structures associated with the Meyer property. We're not losing any money by sitting on this personal property, and I've heard that there are restrictive covenants on whether or not that property, we can even sell that property, or whether it has to stay at the property. I understand Commissioner Max Bauer has asked Bob Cooney to check into that, and I think he's still researching that aspect of it.
If I may interrupt for just a moment.
Sure.
The word property we're using, are we talking about the stuff inside the barns? Or are we
Yes.
talking about the land?
No,
We're talking
no,
about
I'm
the
not
personal
talking about the
property.
land
Personal
at
property.
all.
The land.
Personal property.
Sorry, please continue.
So, and I don't know, Commissioner Max Bauer, is that one of the things Bob updated you with? I know
Bob,
he was researching that.
Bob said that, that there is an agreement. He said, he spoke with Tim Schreiner. He said the agreement is out at Twin Lakes. I have no idea why. But that's what Mr. Cooney told me this morning. And it was Mr. Cooney's opinion that we could indeed sell that personal property. And he thought that,
But there's I'm sorry.
and he seemed receptive to my idea of improving the Meyer property with the funds.
But you said he thinks we can move forward with it, but there might be an agreement out at Twin Lakes?
He said that Tim Schreiner told him that there is an agreement that's in writing that he executed
Okay, so we need to
with
find
Joe
out.
Meyer,
We have
where
to find
we
out.
do own that personal property, and the condition was it was to be used for the public good.
So we need to find that agreement before we can really move forward with any type of restrictive covenants associated with the property, correct?
But as far as Mr. Cooney knows, there are no restrictive covenants to that personal property. There is to the land, but not the personal property. So I'm just asking for us to take a look at it next month. That gives us plenty of time. And if there are no restrictions to that personal property, I just think we ought to use the assets we have and make some park improvements.
Commissioner Doria?
I think it's a great idea. I think maybe it would be a little bit better if we would let our director talk to the county attorney and get straight on whether this is possible and under what conditions, and then report back to us at the next meeting or the one after that, whenever.
That's basically what my
whenever he
motion
can.
is.
The other comment I would have on this is, I would imagine dealing with all of the personal property out there is maybe a very significant amount of time, maybe a very significant responsibility. There aren't just 2 cars, a tractor, a bunch of bales of hay and things like that out there. We're talking old fishing lures, old fishing poles, beds. We're talking a variety of different things, a historic horse-drawn sleigh. I'm happy to take this on with a vote of the commission and with some different direction of what part of the strategic plan would you like me to set aside in the event this project is that large?
Commissioner Max Bauer?
It doesn't have to be that difficult, really. You call up Bancroft auctioneers, and they come and do all the work, and they put it out and they have an auction, and you receive funds, and it's gone.
And different agreements can include that whatever doesn't sell, they haul away.
Yeah, and it virtually is no work for you at all, Jason, and I would love to see us make some park improvements.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes, I don't remember all the details. I obviously was here when that agreement was struck. And since we're dealing with personal property, there very well could be the right to sell that. The one thing that really concerns me is that there are some components of that personal property that have tremendous antique value, okay, really unique antique pieces. And one of the visions that could occur for this piece of property is just what the gentleman brought forth in the first part of the meeting. this type of approach
Yeah.
could occur on that property as he was speaking out in Maple Bay. And I've always brought forth that as a possibility for this property, being within walking distance of the nature center, to be able to come to this property for school-age youngsters to see a pre-1930s farm-era piece of equipment and have someone explain how it worked. And this, you know, some of the, not that the barn's full of antique farm equipment, but there is some there. And that I think it would be in our best interest to at least consider trying to save some of that material that has some real value from an educational component versus just selling it.
Well, perhaps between now and next month, we could go out there and look at it.
Sure.
And there's-
Usually if you have an appraiser, they can usually tell you.
Mr.
what-
Cooney told me this morning that the total value of it is approximately $29,000. That's what he told me.
There is a document out there that was done by someone that tried to put some appraised value to that material.
I mean, I don't know how old that document
It's
is,
fairly
but I
old.
would like us to take a look at it and decide one way or the other, whether we're
Exactly.
going to keep the stuff, whether we're going to sell the stuff, you know.
And I think that a good share of it, you know, a large percentage of it can and probably should be sold.
Yeah,
Okay?
I do too.
And, but there are some components that I think we would someday in the future would wish we hadn't, if we had thought about how we might utilize this property
And,
in a
you know,
different fashion.
And we might, you know, you're exactly right. We might not sell all of it. We might sell some of it,
Right.
most of it.
Right.
But it would raise funds to improve that property.
Sure.
Rebecca, did you have a comment?
No, it was answered.
All right, my own comment is, while I generally like things to be done quickly and let's make a decision to move on, I'm concerned about the strategic plan of this commission last year was to establish a business plan for each park, starting with the Civic Center in Twin Lakes, and then to develop a strategic plan for each park. And so I agree with Commissioner Clark that selling all the stuff is a decision about what to do without having a strategic plan, and is stepping out of order in the way that we said these are our goals and objectives first, here are our priorities. In an ideal park system, we would be able to address at this level. And I don't think my opinion is that we're not at this level yet. We are still dealing with the biggest picture stuff, and that the Meyer property falls below that. So I agree with the necessity to do something one way or the other. And my feeling is that we're not there, and this would be moving that to the head of the line on other priorities that we've set. My fear is, I mean, there's a lot of things that we have to deal with, and we may not get to it for a while. So I don't want to be the roadblock, but this isn't what we agreed to last year.
No,
I agree.
I bring this up every year, and if we don't do anything with it, you can count on me bringing it up again next year.
Your point is well taken. I hadn't thought of that, but I agree with you in terms of what we did agree upon in terms of our strategic plan. You're right in terms of priorities. So, good
Mr.
point.
Chair, could we hear the motion again? Was it to look at the feasibility, or is it to actually auction the items?
No.
Yes, was to next month that the Park and Rec Commission considers authorizing a motion to auction the property,
The personal
the
property.
personal property on the Meyer
I want
property.
to clarify that, we're not auctioning the property.
So it really is essentially adding an agenda item to next month to make a decision next month about what to do.
And doing nothing is a decision.
Right.
It is.
So it's a consideration, and hopefully by next month, we could get that mystery document at Twin Lakes that details whether or not there's any covenants on these personal property items.
All right, any further discussion?
And I just thought, I'd like to bring forth so the commission is aware, you know, I fully agree with Commissioner Maxbauer. The hay, it has no value as the longer it sits in that barn, period, and would, from the standpoint of that component alone, should be addressed from a safety standpoint. The barn also has another issue, and that's dry rot. And removing the hay will help offset some of the aggression of dry rot in that wooden structure.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Can I just offer that we are often in need of hay mulch for different,
All right.
All right.
Got a market.
Hey.
we got it. Able to take some of that off your hands.
Oh, there's
You
a
have a-
pile of it.
Do you have a truck and a trailer?
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All right, once again, the motion is next month, Park and Rec Commission considers authorizing a motion to auction personal property on the Meyer property. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. I lost my piece of paper here. All right, user agreements is next.
As we discussed last month, there was suggested by the Resource Management Administration Committee, and if I recall, this board was this commission was in general agreement with this, to move forward with streamlining and creating better agreements, more consistent agreements for different users of parks and recreation. I worked with Bob Cooney in brainstorming some ideas about how we can move forward with this, and I've created three separate, and he and I are in agreement to create three separate categories, because while each group is unique that rents our facility, and they've asked for a variety of different uses of our facility, they can be categorized generally into three different groups, and I've named them, and frankly, we could name this any other, doesn't really matter what we name it. But I've created a management group, and the group's designated as a management group because they're more robust agreements that typically would be associated with management of an entire park or facility. These agreements would typically, but not exclusively, be longer than 5 years and would allow the group to have either exclusive or primary use of the facility. In all cases, the user groups would have to include. In all cases, the user group would have to include Grand Traverse County as additional insured for $1 million agreement. For $1 million. Agreements at this level would require approval of Parks and Recreation Commission, and this agreement group would include the agreements that we have with T-Bays and ICE. The next group is the steward group, which is, they typically would take on a role in being a steward and promoting the positive use of our facilities or parks. These groups typically work with Parks and Rec to schedule regular events with the maintenance and upkeep of facilities and parks performed by Grand Traverse County. These agreements would typically be 1-year agreements or less. This group would have exclusive use of a park or facility during the predetermined set of times, but would not prevent any other user groups from utilizing the facility or park during times not scheduled. In most cases, this group would have to include Grand Traverse County as an additional insured for $1 million. Agreements at this level would be approved by Parks and Recreation Director. This agreement group would include YMCA softball, breakers, swim team, and the TBA swimming program. This group would also include tournament and other complex shorter events, including the hunting and fishing shows, or arena shows, video game LAN parties, and hobby shows in the meeting room. The final group being the individual group. This category typically be made up of individuals, but may include small organizations or groups that are interested in utilizing our facilities and parks for infrequent, irregular, or one-time events. Entities in this category may be interested in renting our facilities for one-time events such as a meeting, small party at a pavilion, campsites, or a one-time rental at Twin Lakes. Maintenance and any setup teardown would be included in the daily duties of Grand Traverse County. These agreements in this case would provide exclusive use of the arena or the area and facilities rented during the time specified on the permit. Very few cases we would require Grand Traverse County being named an additional insured. These functions are typically lower risk events. Agreements at this level would be approved by the Parks and Recreation staff members via tentative/final permitting system that's specifically designed for each of the different facilities or parks that people rent. These agreements typically would include users of pavilions, campsites on Power Island, and birthday party rentals in the Easling Pool. It's my recommendation that the Commission adopt the following policy. User groups renting facilities or park space owned by Grand Traverse County will be categorized into groups based on the intention of and the requirements of their event. Each group will have a common user agreement germane to that particular group. Determination of the group designation is left to the Parks and Recreation Director.
All right, I'd like to open this one and make the motion because I'd like to change the words just a little bit. So I move that the Commission enacts a policy that user groups renting facilities or park space owned by Grand Traverse County will be categorized into management groups, steward groups, and individual groups. Each group will have a common user agreement germane to that particular group. Determination of the group designation is left to the Parks and Recreation Director. That's my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that for discussion. I'm not sure you want to name those, you're limiting yourself to 3 groups until you change the policy again. It could be that, a couple years from now, we might identify that we need 4 categories.
Okay. Would you like, I guess we can continue discussion, and then you can propose an amendment.
Well, I can propose my amendment right now. My amendment would be to add some language in there, or other groups as determined by the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Okay. Is there a second for the motion to add "or other groups" as determined by the Parks and Recreation Director?
I'll second it.
Okay, Carson's is seconding. Discussion on the amendment to the motion. All right.
I just wanted to clarify, and I may have just misheard what you said. You wanted the additional groups to be determined by the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Yeah.
And did you just say director?
I'm sorry, I said director. You said...
He said commission.
I'll do director, if it doesn't matter to me.
Oh, okay.
I just don't want to limit us to these, because you changed the original motion to include the names.
To include the listed groups, yes.
Right, and that's okay. It's
Yeah.
just I want to add in "or others as determined necessary," and I don't care who determines that they're necessary.
Okay. Or other groups, other groupings.
Just so we don't have to come back and change the policy.
Right.
To make it easier,
Okay.
Commissioner Larson, I guess, Commissioner Doria, are you comfortable with the original wording without utilizing those 3 group names named? Okay.
I felt that was too vague.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so the amendment then would be as I listed it, but also to add the wording "or other groups as determined by the Parks and Recreation Director." Do you agree with that wording?
Yes.
Okay. And do you still agree with the seconding? Does the seconder still agree with that wording? All right, discussion on the amendment? All right, no discussion. So what we're voting on is whether to amend my motion, not whether we're going to approve that, but whether we're just going to amend it. So all in favor of amending it, as just stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries, which means the amendment now includes "or other groups as determined by the Parks and Recreation Director." Any further discussion on that concept? Okay, then the vote now is on the motion as stated to enact the policy, user groups renting facilities or park space owned by Grand Traverse County will be categorized into management group, steward group, or individual groups or other groups as determined by the Parks and Recreation Director, and the rest of it is the same. Each group will have a common user agreement germane to that particular group. Determination of the group designation is left to the Parks and Recreation Director. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Just a further comment, Mr. President. This is good work. I appreciate this.
Regrettably.
I think we're off to a really good start to getting some uniform documents for use.
Thank you.
Okay.
Regrettably, Mr. Chair, I must excuse myself. Thank you.
All right, next item is fundraiser event.
I just wanted to briefly talk about something that I met with Al Larson about, and we talked about at the pool RFQ meeting, that I would really like to put a large-scale family and youth event to be held at the Civic Center in July or in August, doing a bluegrass or rock and roll festival to, obviously raise funds for a predicament we're all in. By reading that article that we all read, I'm sure, in the Record Eagle about the pool closings, or potential pool closing. We talked about that in general, across the country, most pools lose money and you have to offset costs by doing more creative, innovative things. So I wanted to just bring this to everyone's attention, that I'm wanting to put something like this together, and if anyone has any input on it at this point. I'm talking with Porterhouse Productions or there's a couple other companies out there that do this type of thing. But, you know, I just think it's a great way to generate funds in a much needed environment and a great space to do such an event.
All right, your motion then would be?
What I would like to do is have in our next meeting is give a more formal outline presentation of this type of an event, which we are predicting potentially 10,000 people to attend, no alcohol involved, and give a more general outline of what our thoughts are, taking away the risk factor with the Civic Center by having a more of a production event type company coming in to do that, so that obviously if they don't make their mark, then it's no risk to the county.
Okay, so you'd like to add an agenda item for next month, is that?
Yes.
Okay, I guess we can wait till then for further discussion, or did you want to discuss more?
Well, I'd love to, in the meantime, if anyone has anything to add on that, or what are your thoughts on that, or?
Commissioner Carstens?
Sounds like a terrific idea. If you're going to be the lead person, and I think that's really admirable that you want to do this and run with it. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. All right, next item is fee structures. I know the night is going long, and but this was a priority for us, so I'm going to keep moving forward. If you could take one of these sheets and pass it down, just for simplicity, so I can perhaps avoid the repeated tedious readings of the motions over and over and over again. I've got 7 motions I'd like to bring, and this is based on what we discussed. 6 of the motions are what we discussed at the work-study meeting on Wednesday. The bottom one is my own, and so I'll move forward with that. What I did was took the consensus of what we discussed on Wednesday, and I put them into words.
Al?
Yes.
Just so the commission knows, you use scrap paper?
Yes, I did.
Correct? So the information on reverse has nothing to do with art. I saw a couple of commissioners flip around.
Yes.
For addition.
FAA approvals for old stuff. I'm trying to get environmentalist of the year.
I thought the other side was an admonition to someone like me. But anyway.
All right. So I'll make my first motion that the rental fees for the use of Howe Arena be changed to reflect different rates for renters under the following categories. Category A, government and public bodies. B, nonprofit organizations with 501c3 tax-exempt status. C, nonprofit organizations without 501c3 status. And D, for-profit entities. Can I have a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
All right. Commissioner Carstens is second. Discussion? All right. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Motion is carried as written there on number 1. Item number 2, I move that the rental fees for the use of Howe Arena be changed to reflect different rates for weekend use versus weekday use, with weekend use rates being higher.
I'll second.
I'll take Commissioner Clark as a second this time. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I move that the fees for organizations renting the full or partial use of Easeling Pool be changed to reflect different rates for renters under the following categories. This is slightly different than the other one. Government, public bodies, and nonprofit organizations with 501c3 tax-exempt status, nonprofit organizations without 501c3 status, and for-profit entities. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Dorier. Any discussion? And Jason, the intent of this is not to change individual lap swim or daily swim or lessons fees or anything like that, simply to talk about pool rentals of lanes or partial.
Yep, I think it's very clear.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, motion number 4. I move that the fees for the Civic Center and Twin Lakes meeting rooms and for Twin Lakes Gilbert Lodge be changed as follows. A, the first change is the different rates for different sized groups be eliminated. And B, rental rates be instituted reflecting different rates for renters under the following categories. Number 1, government and public bodies. Number 2, nonprofit organizations with 501c3 tax-exempt status. 3, nonprofit organizations without 501c3 status. And 4, for-profit entities. Second?
I'll second.
Karsten's seconding. Discussion.
I have a question on this one.
Yes, Commissioner Maxbauer.
When you say different rent rates for renters under the following categories, government and public bodies, I do know that there are county departments that use Twin Lakes for meetings. So how does this impact them? This might be a question more for Jason.
My intent was that we give those meeting rooms at the Civic Center for free to government and public bodies. And that if we have that as a consistent policy for all the meeting rooms, that's fine, but we distinguish them as a different rate. At the Civic Center, that rate is 0. And then for nonprofit 501(c)(3)s, then C3s, then that there is a rate for that. And that was the intention, is to distinguish those groups under a different rate, which might be 0 for some other facilities.
Okay.
So in that includes, say, Garfield Township wanted to rent the space at the Civic Center, they would be free as well.
Well, as I understood it, what we decided was things like government organizations and school corporations, true public bodies like that, which would include, to me, townships and that type of thing. That's the way I felt. Of course, I'm certainly open to amending if I misinterpreted what we said.
I just wanted to clarify.
Absolutely.
I
Russ?
just want a clarification. How does this in no way affects a private citizen's user rate fees then?
Well, my opinion is that I didn't have the individuals, but what we decided individuals was nonprofit, or were under the nonprofit without 501(c)(3) status, I thought. But we can put them under nonprofits, or we can add them to individuals, for-profit entities and individuals. We can do that. That's not very clearly addressed, and I wasn't sure what we decided.
I agree. I guess when I read this, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of an organizational entity of some type, for-profit, nonprofit, of one status or another. But John Smith wants to rent the building for a wedding. Which category is he under?
III.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Commissioner Dory?
It doesn't spell it out, but he's under III, nonprofit organization without 501c3 status.
That's what I thought we said the other night at the meeting.
I just wanted to make sure.
But if an individual wants to rent it out for the purpose of profit, then
That would be the fifth.
He's
for profit.
Number 4.
then he's for profit, yeah.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Right. Okay.
Commissioner Maxbauer?
I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Sure.
I think it absolutely is appropriate to not necessarily charge Garfield Township, East Bay Township, Acme Township to come and have a meeting. But if they're coming out there to have a dinner,
No, that's an excellent point. That is an excellent point.
then I have a little bit of a problem. So I guess how is that handled under here?
That's a good one. I'm open to ideas.
I don't see a huge difference there.
Okay.
You're going to have a lot of government bodies out there having
Parties? I don't think so.
retirement parties, I mean, I don't know, maybe not, but it just,
I think they're mostly government functions. There may be a meal involved or something, but
We could say official functions. Commissioner Carson?
Recently, they had the state used the Civic Center to, I think it had something to do with transportation. And at that time, did they pay anything for that, or there was no charge?
Recently?
Yes. Well, sometime, it was the sun was out still, it was in the fall.
Yes, they did. The state did pay.
Right, and so I was just wondering, that's an opportunity for us to earn some money. And if they didn't get it from us, they might go to the Park Place and they would pay money there, I would think. They wouldn't get it for free either. So I wouldn't want to eliminate our opportunity to earn money from, unless it was just a token fee, or was it?
It was the meeting room rate.
I see. And so I was just, or if it's some entity that isn't part of Grand Traverse County or a township or a city, I think we ought to be open for charging those parties if we have done it so in the past. And so somehow if we could modify this to make that possible.
Would you suggest government and public bodies within Grand Traverse County?
Yes, I think, yeah.
So anything bigger than Grand Traverse County, the state of Michigan?
Yes, or the U.S. government, the federal government too, maybe for some reason might want to do it too.
Yeah, the one I was really worried about or concerned about, like the pool one, I changed it because the Coast Guard is a big customer, and just because
Yeah.
they're a public body, I don't think we should give them the pool for free.
I agree, yes.
And so then I was like, oh gracious, what door did I just open? And that's an excellent point you bring. All right, are we ready for an amendment then to say?
Number 3?
The amendment would be government and public bodies within Grand Traverse County. Or within, or...
It's a county facility, so yeah.
You could say local, and then you could have a nice court fight about what that means.
Or just say government.
Local government and public bodies, that's pretty good.
Local government within the Grand Traverse County borders.
Well, the Coast Guard is within
But it's not local.
state
That's
police.
federal.
We've already
True.
passed number 3. We need to go back and perhaps rethink that.
Well,
The likelihood of that happening in the pool is much less, though, than meeting rooms.
The meeting
No,
rooms.
but
back to number 3, on the pool one,
The
I
Coast Guard.
worded it differently because the rates for government, the government renting the pool is not going to get it, Grand Traverse County is not going to get the pool for free.
No, and that, yeah, I
So
see.
their rates, the rate structure is
okay, all right,
99, 100, 101.
all right.
And that's why number 3 is worded differently than the others.
All
Number
right.
I
4 is going to
understand.
be a large difference.
It's
All
it's a
right.
lower rate, but it's still a rate.
All right.
Yes,
Right.
Correct.
still a rate. Unlike number 4, which for government and public bodies, we've been giving them meeting rooms for free. And so I think local government and public bodies is not bad. We can also add for official functions if we want to distinguish that from a retirement party or a Christmas party or something like that, if such a thing occurs. If what we don't want to do is sort of open the door to, oh, wow, well, I work for I'm a custodian at Grand Traverse County, I'm running this.
Well, it would
have to be
but a township Christmas party, I mean, but but you can't serve alcohol there, so I don't know how many of those you're going to have.
Yes.
First of all, townships aren't allowed to use their funds for Christmas parties.
Right.
And in the 10 years I've worked there, I don't know of a governmental unit that's had a dinner. It wasn't involving a meeting or some government business.
Okay,
Okay, good.
fine.
All right, then I probably shouldn't amend my own motion. If I could have a motion to amend.
If I knew what you wanted to, if I was,
I think local.
I've lost it.
Local.
Local government and public bodies under the single I.
Okay.
So
I
you're,
motion that.
Okay, motion by Cass to insert the word local before the word government in number 4. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dwyer. Discussion on the amendment. All right, all in favor of amending the motion with the word local, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Now the motion includes the word local government and public bodies. Any further discussion on the motion?
I'll second it. Or has it been?
It's been seconded.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, any further
late.
discussion?
Just trying to move this along.
All right. All right, no further discussion then. So then item 4 is as printed except for local government and public bodies. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, motion number 5, I move that the fees for the use of pavilions be amended to include an appropriate charge when requests are made for special setup arrangements. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dorier. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Item number 6. I move that the campsite fees for Bassett Island be raised by approximately 25% to reflect the unique nature of the property and the high demand for its use. Rate distinctions will be maintained between weekends and weekdays and residents and non-residents. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Clark. Discussion. Now, I couldn't remember exactly what numbers we threw out there on Wednesday, and I apparently didn't write them down, but I was looking for sort of generally what we threw out there was about that much, and so my intent is not, well, 25% of 31 is, $7.42, and we end up with these weird
Right.
things, is to round them off appropriately to make the numbers a reasonable approach.
And these would go into effect for the next year's,
I was
next
going to ask that
calendar year?
question. I
That's an
hope so.
excellent point. Yes, it would seem to be appropriate for calendar year 2012. Commissioner Maxbauer.
Is this Bassett Island or Power Island?
Well, Jason, if you could explain that.
Bassett Island's
This
where the
were-
campground.
Originally, we owned Bassett and Power Island, and they were, when they came into county ownership, they were separate islands. With the water level going down in Lake Michigan, we now have Bassett Island connected via isthmus to Power Island.
Okay.
Camping actually occurs on what's known as Bassett Island.
Okay,
It
thank
was
you.
once its own island.
You're
Fine.
wedded. So just have a hyphen.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Good
Number
work.
7. What?
That whole exercise we went through with, at our study session and then this result is really good work.
Yes, it's
Thank you.
impressive.
All right, last item. I move that the membership fees for Easling Pool be raised approximately 10% to account for increased costs since the last rate change. Can I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dorier. Discussion.
Question. We recently, of course, it might have been a little while ago, raised the senior rates.
I'm really losing it.
And we recently raised the senior rates,
Senior rates?
and we're raising them again.
My feeling,
And it's fine if that's what we're doing, but I just want to clarify. And the other question I have is, what date will this be effective? My husband's membership is up in June.
I don't have answers to that at this moment. My intent on this, we didn't discuss this. What we said initially as we were getting started in the whole process, and maybe weren't tuned into how we were going to approach it all the way, was that our fees were generally in line with other fees. As I began to look at that, of course, I had a very large table of apples and oranges, and so it's not all the same. Now, I'd forgotten that we had raised the fees for seniors, and it's not my intent to stick it to seniors or anything like that, but costs continue to go up over time, and if we don't continue to
I
modify
agree. I
them, we
mean,
have to make changes.
I've been complaining about the fees for a long
Right.
time.
In general, I think they're extremely low.
They are.
$189
They
for an
are.
individual to swim for the year. If I swim twice a week, 100 times a
I
year, that's
agree.
$1.80
I agree.
per trip to the pool. That's practically free. And so I would be willing to pay more, and I'm not saying I'm stepping up. I'm just saying that if I were a swimmer not on this board, my rate is somewhere up around $350 a time when I'm going, I'm going to limit it. So you can see, my swimming, I'd pay double. So a 10% increase to me is modest and less than what I would normally grab for if it were my business.
Well, I'm not arguing you, I just wanted clarification that and I wanted to point out that we did recently raise seniors and now we're going to do it again.
Do you
That's all.
recall, do you recall what the details of that were, Marilyn or Jason, on how much we raised it and when?
The annual rate for seniors was 104, and it's now 151.
That's a substantial increase.
Yeah, that's why I
And
asked the
the
question.
half-year rate was 80. I can't quote that one.
Do you know when these changes were made? Do you remember that?
I remember Mr. Doran making a motion,
So that would have been last year?
probably last year. He wanted to bring the seniors in line.
So it was just seniors that changed?
Yes,
Yes.
just seniors.
We dropped some packages. Dropped punch card packages.
Yeah, you simplified.
And we raised the seniors because they were only paying $104 individual rate senior, and an individual that wasn't over 62 was paying $189. So he...
You know, I think I remember it was around August, Marilyn,
Okay.
because I had just gotten Greg's membership in June.
Commissioner
So
Doria?
Yeah, I just, in the interest of moving this along and respecting that, that recent change, why don't we exclude seniors from this increase?
I'll support that.
Okay, so the motion is, an amendment has been proposed that would say the membership fees for Easling Pool, except for the senior rates, be raised approximately 10% to account for increased costs since the last rate change. You agree with that wording?
Yes.
You agree with that wording? Okay, so moved by Doria, seconded by Taylor, to insert the words, except for senior rates, after Easling Pool. All right, then, any discussion on the amendment?
I'm sorry, really quick, what is the age for the seniors?
62.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of amending the motion with the words, except for senior rates inserted, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, any further discussion then on the actual motion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the motion, the membership fees for Easling Pool, except for senior rates, be raised approximately 10% to account for increased costs since the last rate change. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, next item is 2011 budget.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to just discuss this. As Commissioner Cass alluded to, there's been a lot of activity in the press, you know, in the newspaper, also on TV. Commissioner Max Bauer tipped us off at our study session that the county was having some financial troubles. My understanding is that the county administrator is going to be working on some proposals to address that. But it dismays me a little bit to see county commissioners out there talking about things like closing the pool, not having a ranger at Power Island, returning Twin Lakes to the donors, and things like that. I think that's our job, is to manage the budget for Parks and Recreation. You know, it doesn't look like the county commission is going to come back to us and ask us what our ideas are, or even tell us how much money they're looking to cut out of the budget. I would propose, and just for discussion here, I don't want to make a motion, but I think it would be a good idea if we got our budget subcommittee up and going. I'm a member of that. We formed that committee some months ago, and it hasn't met yet. But I think maybe we somehow, either through that subcommittee or some other way, we need to come up with some proposals to cut some money out of the 2011 budget. Either that, or we just watch TV and see what the county commissioners do. That seems to be our only two choices.
Two responses to that. The first is I was disappointed to see Commissioner Inman's comments. I felt like in our discussions on the American Legion issue, we were in agreement that there were multiple other possible solutions and options that could be pursued before declaring what the end state was going to be, absent discussion with all the appropriate parties. It seemed that we're back in that same mode again. That's my personal opinion. Secondly, I meant to do the research prior to the meeting, and I forgot. As I recall, the Finance Committee was created, and I believe Commissioner Joseph was in charge of calling the meeting. And so that is probably why it hasn't met. Could I have a volunteer to take over leadership of that subcommittee to move forward?
Who are the members of that subcommittee? From my understanding, it was Joseph, McKellier, and myself.
And me.
Okay. I just cornered him before, McKellier, before he left, and I think he remembers that he was on that committee. I could be the chair of that if you're looking for a chair. If that's the way to do this. I'm not so sure that committee is I don't know. It was my suggestion, so here I am backing out of it. But what do you guys think? Is that the way to do this, or do we want to do this, or do we want to just let the county commission slice our budgets? In my opinion, closing the pool is the absolute last thing to do to this department.
Commissioner Maxbauer.
Well, I want to comment a little bit about the newspaper article as well as the television interview. First of all, no county commissioner said that we are going to close the swimming pool. What we have said is that everything is on the table. When I was interviewed by TV7 and 4, I was asked to comment on the budget shortfall, and I will tell you all that the budget shortfall, we had planned, the county board, to spend $625,000 out of fund balance this year. The county administrator gave us information last night, and we are another $711,000 short. So that's a $1.3 million hole. So everything is on the table. And what I said was that essential services are more important to me as a commissioner than non-essential services. And I will say it again today. Essential services are more important to me than non-essential services. But I will say again that no county commissioner said that we are going to close the swimming pool. That decision has not been made.
My response to that would be that the quotes in the paper were that Commissioner Inman said we need to and we should do this, and he didn't say we were going to, but to me it was a foregone conclusion. I agree that your comments were everything's on the table, and I felt that was an appropriate look at everything should be on the table. I felt the language was aggressive. Jason.
One of the things that I guess in dealing with things like the baseball agreement, I'm finding that too many cooks in the kitchen are spoiling the broth. It's worked well to communicate with one commissioner, right now being Commissioner Larson, and trying to communicate with one person at American Legion. I think moving forward, we're going to have too many cooks in the kitchen. They're going to spoil the broth in coming up with any type of proposal from the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Parks and Recreation Director associated with any type of budget shortfall that Dennis Oloya may look for within the Parks and Recreation Fund to cut for this budget shortfall in 2011. That being said, it's worked well for me to work directly with Commissioner Larson associated with the baseball agreement. I think Commissioner Dorier and I to work together to come up with some type of proposal. He and I could meet with Dennis Oloya, figure out, have Dennis give us maybe a target for us to achieve. Commissioner Dorier, with his background in Parks and Recreation and his understanding, I guess his relatively new understanding of the budget, and me being able to explain the budget so he understands it to an appropriate level, and being able to deal directly one-on-one with someone instead of trying to create another committee with 4 different people with four different schedules that we have to work around. I think it would work better for he and I to work specifically together to come up with a budget number that would fit any proposal that Dennis would take to the County Board of Commissioners for this budget cut. I think that would be appropriate. It would then come to this commission before it would be proposed to Dennis, and I think that's something I'm finding is working well with our baseball agreement in dealing with specific issues with one commissioner and moving forward. to avoid some of the rumor, to avoid some of the speculation that is mixing the signals related to a variety of topics associated with our Parks and Recreation Department. We have a lot of frustration that I've heard just tonight in this meeting, and frankly, I have a lot of frustration associated with who's saying what and the rumors that we've heard about this and that. Me dealing directly with one commissioner and having one point person is crucial to proper communication and to getting things done in an appropriate manner.
Commissioner Maxwell?
Well, first of all, let us refresh, one of the reasons that we had the Financial Subcommittee was to take a look at the budget numbers that we get and how to better prepare them. Another reason that I suggested the subcommittee was to take a look at next year's budget, not this year's budget. Now, I will tell you that the county administrator has asked for ideas from every county commissioner, and he's going to get mine, just so you know.
Commissioner Dwyer?
I think there's a lot of wisdom in what Jason just said. I support that concept, and I think it's a good idea. And it is a separate issue. It's separate from budget reports and 2012. This is 2011 immediate cuts to programs. And I'd be willing to pursue that path if that's what the commission wants. I think it's a good idea.
All right, first item I would like to address then is the leadership on the Finance Committee. And I think that's an appointment. Is that I don't remember. I missed that first January meeting. So Commissioner Dwyer, would you take leadership of that and call the meetings and go forth with the original charter of that?
Yes, but my first priority is this other task, if that's okay. If that's how you're going to set this up.
I would look at it two separate issues.
Okay.
First is, would you take leadership of that committee? And
yes.
Execute their original charter?
Yes.
Any objections to that? No. Okay. The second issue is this budget issue of the 2011 budget, and I would just like us to be part of the conversation is all. That's all I want, is to be part of the conversation and not to be told what the end result is before the discussion has even occurred. So I don't have a problem with having Commissioner Dwyer work with Jason, but I don't know that we need I'm not sure how to do that. I don't need to assign. I don't want him to assign him to a staff type duty. You first.
I also have a problem with assigning staff work to a Parks Commissioner. But I don't have a problem, well, how do I say this?
Maybe I could help. Would you prefer I work on something? And
yeah, and bring it to the Parks Commission.
There we go. That's fine.
I'll bounce ideas off the appropriate person.
Because we speak, boards should speak with one voice, as a board. And so, yeah, bring some recommendations. Oh, yeah, I see that. I see that.
I just think American Legion, and,
Oh, let's not go there.
We didn't do that. No, I think we're on a good track here. So Jason's going to come up with some proposals, bring them to us, and that's great. That's his job. That's good.
And I want to add just one more thing. I mean, it's possible that the Parks budget might not take cuts. I mean, it might be other departments. But if you're looking to be prepared for cuts from the Parks Department, I think that's fine. But again, it's the county board's responsibility to make those decisions. So please understand that.
Yes. Looking at what their website says, what they value, it includes communication with other organizations. I would just like to be a part of that conversation.
Yes, and I
don't need to have the final say. I don't have the final say.
And being prepared, there's nothing wrong with being prepared.
Okay. Anything else on the 2011 budget?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next item, aquatic report.
The aquatic report's a written report that's in your packet.
Okay. Any questions on the aquatic report as presented? All right, next item is director's report.
I'm going to spare you my director's report. Everything that I have is written there, with the exception of one thing. Our community collaboration group was funded in the amount of $5,000 in order to create or start a needs analysis and recreation inventory for Grand Traverse County and the TCAPS attendance area, which is the majority of Grand Traverse County, but doesn't reach down to Kingsley, Fife Lake, in Forest Area School District, and extends a little bit north of Grand Traverse County. I shouldn't say that. Extends adjacent to Grand Traverse County in Leelanau, Benzie, and maybe Antrim County. Working through our committee, we found that there was an amount of, we were able to get a $5,000 grant, and it was the intent of our committee that we were able to match 25% of that, $1,250, as an in-kind donation. And this is all new news that came up Tuesday, I believe. Monday, excuse me. We found out that we weren't able to utilize that $1,250 in in-kind donations. So we do have to come up with a cash match to fulfill this grant obligation. And I'm bringing this up because I don't know that it's necessary for us to make a motion on this yet. But we have several communities that are involved in this, including Grand Traverse County, Garfield Township, the City of Traverse City, East Bay Township. And I think it's appropriate for our community collaboration group to move forward and ask those government entities, and including TCAPS, to foot some of that bill. So let's split that $1,200 bill down to, $300-400 here or there. So next month I will be coming to this commission with asking for some amount of money, no greater than $1,250, to be that match to go out for that needs analysis. I think it's important for us to invest in it because that needs analysis is going to give us a tremendous amount of background information that will really be the foundation for us accomplishing, or I guess me accomplishing, the strategic plan that the commission put out. I think we've been waiting, and I think this baseline information will be asking some much broader questions that the community's never been asked in regards to parks and recreation. And I think it'll do us justice and serve our community, or our commission well, in moving forward with planning for parks and recreation in the future of Grand Traverse County. So be prepared for that, and I will be talking with the other communities. So Russ, think about that for Garfield, would you?
One of the things I'm concerned about with that survey, Jason, or the gathering of public comment is, as I was going through my schooling, I would in a science class, I would devise an experiment and then come out, and then the answer wouldn't be exactly what I wanted to, and then I realized that maybe I'd asked the wrong question or hadn't asked the right question, and I wish I would have tested for this particular property or something like that, or done this particular test, and then I ended up without the right data at the end. What sort of level of input will we have to the questions that are asked?
We haven't even had the initial, we've just received the grant. Our initial meeting is going to be scheduled for the first week in May, and we're going to kind of hash over some of those questions. One of the things that the consultant is going to do, he's going to do a variety of primary research, a lot of polling, surveys, things like that to the greater community, but he's also doing a tremendous amount of secondary research. I forwarded him just yesterday master plans for, I think, 8 different municipalities within Grand Traverse County. So he's going to be able to look at the information that each individual community has accumulated, and then be able to compare that with the primary research that he's going to move forward and do. So I hope that helps you feel better about the data he will receive, because it's data that our community's been asked before in a variety of different ways from a variety of different municipalities. The primary research is going to ask some of those broader questions. Do you think cricket is important to Grand Traverse County? Do you think swimming is important to residents of Grand Traverse County? Those are the types of broader questions I would anticipate him asking. I'll have more clarification the first week of May.
Okay, very good. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Any questions for Jason?
I have just one. Is this going to be somewhat redundant now that the county board is going to results-based budgeting? We are going to have a public input process.
This is, you may have a public input process. This is a,
We will have a public input process.
I don't know that you're going to have the public input to the degree that
Yeah.
this survey will be asking the
Okay.
community specifically about parks and recreation.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Second public comment session. Ben?
I would just like to thank all the commissioners for their long and hard work on behalf of our county parklands.
All right, very good. Notices and commissioner comments. Anything that anybody would like to bring up? Commissioner Doria?
I would like to be on the agenda for the next meeting. I want to do a real brief, and I mean like 5-minute discussion of another county park system that I'm familiar with, and kind of compare it to Grand Traverse County, if that's okay.
Okay, you're added.
Thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Max Bauer?
I wanted to share some comments I made at a county board meeting in case anyone didn't hear them. Julie Clark, the head of TART, received grant money from Grand Traverse County, Garfield Township, and the city of Traverse City to study whether or not they should put a tunnel underneath South Airport or a bridge over it, over by, it's Medalley, I'm sorry, over by Medalley Park.
Right.
And one of the things I mentioned when Julie was doing her presentation was, this might be an opportunity to work towards an authority. Garfield Township has some park property right there. The city has some park property in there, and we have Medalley Park. And I don't know exactly, how we would go forward, but I see this as an opportunity to form an authority and get funding to connect those trails that are on in that area. And I just wanted to share my comments that I made.
Russ?
If I could expand on that, obviously I've been a proponent for considering a recreation authority for several years now. I really think that that's one of the basic underlying questions that the survey should try and address, is that there's support for looking at recreation on a regional basis, and if there is support, then pursuing it with that ammunition behind us.
But
I agree that there are many opportunities where it would be beneficial.
I just don't know where to start, but it just seemed like that.
In the end, you have to have public support in order to move forward.
True, you're right.
Another aspect is that funding will be more readily available if you're working in
Yeah.
cooperation
And
with other
that was
government
my thought as
entities.
well,
And so,
yeah.
so if we want to open a door for funding, it's the key, one of the primary keys.
All right, any other comments?
Just, it's a pleasure, and I'm really impressed with your productivity and the way this commission is working.
All meetings will be
It's
4-hour
an
meetings
honor
from
to
now
be amongst you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Max Bauer, seconded by Taylor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. 9:58.